Hey guys, tonight we will uncover one of the greatest forgotten mysteries in Greek mythology. A goddess erased from history, a secret buried by the Olympian gods, and a legend that was never meant to survive. So before we begin, dim the lights, put on your headphones if you have them, and let the world around you disappear. Because tonight, we're opening a chapter of Greek mythology that Olympus tried to erase. Let's begin. There are stories the world remembers. Stories of Zeus, who ruled the skies with thunder in his hand. Stories of Athena, born from the head of her father, carrying wisdom sharper than any blade. Stories of Hades, silent king of the underworld, and Poseidon, whose anger could swallow entire kingdoms beneath the sea. Every child who grew up in the ancient Greece knew their names. Every temple echoed with prayers offered to them. Every king sought their blessing before marching into war. But there was one name no priest dared to whisper. One name every historian scratched from stone. One name that even the gods themselves feared. Not because she was evil, not because she was cruel, but because she remembered something the Olympians wanted the world to forget. And if that memory ever returned, Olympus itself would fall. Long before Zeus became king of the heavens, before Mount Olympus glittered with marble halls and immortal feasts, the world belonged to older powers. The Titans shaped mountains with their hands. Ancient spirits wandered forests before trees had names. The rivers carried voices instead of water. The stars moved because unseen hands guided them across the night. It was an age when every force of nature possessed a soul. And among those forgotten powers, there existed a goddess unlike any other. She did not command storms, she did not rule oceans, she did not govern war or love. She ruled something far more dangerous, memory. Not ordinary memories. She guarded the first memory, the memory of how reality itself had begun. Her name was Lithera. Few dared to speak it, even fewer survived after doing so. Unlike the shining gods of Olympus, Lithera had no palace. She lived beyond the edges of creation, inside a silent valley where time barely moved. No birds sang there, no wind disturbed the grass. Even sunlight seemed afraid to enter. At the center of the valley stood a lake as smooth as polished silver. Its waters reflected not faces, but forgotten moments. Anyone who looked into that lake would not see themselves. They would see something they had lost, a childhood smile, a dead mother, a forgotten promise, a terrible mistake, or a future that could never happen. The lake remembered everything, because Lithera remembered everything. The oldest gods respected her. Even the Titans avoided her valley, not because she possessed overwhelming strength, but because knowledge was more terrifying than power. A sword could kill the body, a storm could destroy a city, but truth could destroy entire civilizations. And Lithera carried every truth that had ever existed. Then came the Great War, the Titanomachy, the war that lasted 10 years. Mountains split apart, the oceans boiled, the sky burned red for weeks. Zeus led the younger gods against the Titans. History remembers his victory. History celebrates his courage. History calls him the rightful king. History lies, because there was one battle, one impossible battle, that no scroll has ever recorded. Near the end of the war, Zeus climbed the forgotten valley. He climbed alone. No eagle followed him. No lightning flashed above him. No army marched behind him. He came as a frightened son, not yet a king. When he reached the silver lake, Lithera was already waiting. She sat beside the water. Her long white robes touched the surface without creating a ripple. Her silver hair floated in air that held no wind. Her eyes reflected galaxies that did not yet exist. She never looked surprised, because she had already remembered every future. "You've come for the memory," she said quietly. Zeus stopped walking. He had spoken no words, yet she already knew why he had come. "I need to win. You already know you will. I need certainty. There is no certainty. There must be. There never was. Zeus stepped closer. I will become king. Lithra looked toward the silent lake. You will. I will create peace. For a while, I will protect mankind. For a while, I will build a better world. For a while. Every answer ended the same. For a while. Zeus felt something unfamiliar. Fear. What happens after that? Lithra finally turned toward him. For the first time, her expression held sadness. You ask a question no ruler should ever ask. I want the truth. No. She stood slowly. You only think you do. The silver lake began glowing. Its surface transformed into moving images. Zeus watched cities burn, temples collapse, kings murdering brothers, children crying beneath skies black with smoke. He saw countless wars fought in his own name. He saw innocent people sacrificed to please him. He saw priests lying to control kingdoms. He saw empires rise, only to crumble into dust. Then, he saw Olympus itself, destroyed, its marble shattered, its throne empty, its gods gone. Only silence remained. Impossible, Zeus whispered. Lithra's voice remained calm. Everything ends. I can stop it. No. I am Zeus. You are temporary. His hands clenched. There must be another future. There are thousands. Show me. They all end. Something changed inside Zeus. Until that moment, he had feared losing the war. Now, he feared something much worse, being forgotten. If people remember the ending, they will fear you. If they fear me, they won't worship me. If they don't worship me, you become what every god eventually becomes. And what is that? Lithra answered with a single word. Forgotten. Silence consumed the valley. For the first time in his immortal life, Zeus understood the greatest enemy of every god. Not titans, not monsters, not fate. Oblivion. What if no one ever learns this memory? He finally asked. Lithra slowly closed her eyes. The truth exists, whether remembered or not. What if the keeper disappears? Her eyes opened again. For the first time, she looked afraid. You would destroy balance. I would save Olympus. You would doom it. The valley trembled. The silver lake darkened. Somewhere beyond the mountains, thunder echoed, not from the sky, from Zeus himself. He had made his decision. Thousands of years later, every Greek child would know Zeus. Every temple would honor Athena. Every sailor would fear Poseidon. Every soul would speak the name of Hades. But no one, not a single soul, would remember Lithra, because on that forgotten day, the king of the gods committed the first crime Olympus would spend eternity hiding. And before the sun set, a goddess disappeared from history, forever, or so the Olympians believed. There are wars that end with victory. There are wars that end with surrender. And then, there are wars that end with a lie. The Titanomachy was remembered as the day Zeus saved the world. Songs were written, temples were raised, kings crowned themselves beneath his symbol. History called him the Liberator. But history never mentioned what happened in the Forgotten Valley, because that was not a battle against Titans. It was the first battle against the truth itself. Lithra stood beside the silver lake without moving. She did not summon a weapon. She did not call upon monsters. She simply watched Zeus, not with anger, not with fear, but with the quiet sadness of someone who had already lived this moment 1,000 times. You've chosen, she said. Zeus's voice was firm. I have. You believe you can protect Olympus. I will. You believe the truth is the enemy. If the truth destroys hope, then yes. Lithra lowered her eyes. The truth never destroys hope. It only destroys illusions. Dark clouds gathered over the valley. For the first time in countless ages, lightning struck the silent mountains. Not once, not twice, again and again. The earth itself seemed to recoil. Even the ancient trees bent away from Zeus. Nature recognized what he intended before he spoke a single word. I cannot allow this memory to exist. Lithra nodded. I know. I cannot allow anyone to see what you showed me. I know. I cannot allow Olympus to fall. It already will. The words cut deeper than any blade. Zeus raised his hand. Golden lightning gathered around his fingers. The sky answered with a roar that shook the heavens. But Lithra never reached for a weapon. Instead, she stepped toward him. You could destroy me. Her voice was almost gentle. But you cannot destroy memory. I can bury it. For a while. Those same words again. For a while. Zeus hated those words, because somewhere deep inside, he knew they were true. The first bolt struck the lake, not Lithra, the lake. Silver water exploded into the sky like shattered glass. Except it wasn't water anymore. Millions of glowing fragments floated upward. Each fragment contained a memory, a child taking its first step, a mother singing beside a fire, a soldier laying down his sword instead of using it, a dying king whispering his final regret, the birth of mountains, the first sunrise, the first tear ever shed, the first lie ever spoken, the first memory. Everything that had ever happened, everything that ever would. The entire history of existence, scattered across the heavens. Zeus stared in disbelief. He had expected destruction. Instead, he had broken reality itself. The memories began escaping, flying like stars in every direction. Some disappeared into rivers, others hid beneath forests, some buried themselves inside mountains. A few drifted beyond the edge of the mortal world. Memory could not be destroyed. It could only scatter. Lithra closed her eyes. You've done it. What? You've broken remembrance. I've saved Olympus. No. She looked toward the glowing sky. You've made forgetting possible. Before that moment, nothing had ever truly been forgotten. Lost, perhaps. Hidden, certainly, but never erased. Every event, every promise, every name existed forever inside Lithra's care. Now, for the first time, the universe learned how to forget. Zeus realized the mistake too late. He reached toward the escaping lights, but they slipped through his fingers, like smoke, like dreams fading after waking, like memories already disappearing. One fragment landed in the sea, thousands of years later. Sailors would call it déjà vu. One fragment buried itself beneath a mountain. Future prophets would mistake it for visions. Another settled inside newborn children. Those children would spend their entire lives feeling homesick for places they had never seen. None of them knew why. Only Lithra understood. The world was remembering pieces of itself without knowing what they were. Then the valley became silent. The silver lake was gone. Only cracked white stone remained. Lithra looked weaker, not wounded, not dying, simply fading. She smiled, a tired smile. You cannot keep truth buried forever. I only need forever. There is no forever. There will be. There never has been. Zeus stepped closer. I cannot kill you. I know. An immortal memory cannot die. I know. So I'll do something worse. For the first time, Lithra's expression changed. Not fear, pity. She pitied him. You'll erase my name. Zeus hesitated. You already knew. You decided before climbing this mountain. He lifted both hands. The sky opened. Lightning surrounded the valley in a circle of blinding gold. But this lightning carried no heat. It carried command. The authority of a future king. Every mountain heard it. Every river obeyed. Every wind carried the decree. Every god across creation felt it. Zeus spoke, and reality listened. From this day forward, no temple shall bear her name. No priest shall speak her story. No poet shall sing her deeds. No child shall remember her face. No king shall write her history. No god shall reveal her existence. If anyone remembers, Memory itself shall abandon them. The curse spread across the world. Stone inscriptions cracked. Ancient scrolls turned blank. Paintings faded. Statues crumbled. Even conversations changed. Priests stopped in the middle of prayers, unable to remember who they had been praying to. Artists stared at unfinished murals, wondering why they had painted an unfamiliar woman. Mothers forgot bedtime stories. Old philosophers lost entire lifetimes of knowledge overnight. History rewrote itself, as if Lithra had never existed, across Olympus. The gods watched in silence. Athena understood exactly what Zeus had done. She said nothing. Poseidon looked away. Apollo lowered his head. Hermes almost spoke, but fear sealed his lips. Only Hestia whispered quietly, "This will cost us." No one answered. Deep beneath the earth, Hades felt something disappear. Not a soul, not a life, a memory. He closed his eyes. Even he, Lord of the Dead, could no longer remember what had been lost. He only knew something precious had vanished. And somehow, that frightened him. Days became years. Years became centuries. Centuries became millennia. The forgotten valley disappeared beneath forests. The broken lake became dust. Its location vanished from every map. Travelers walked across it without realizing where they stood. Even the stars above seemed unwilling to point toward it. The world moved on, exactly as Zeus intended. Almost. Because there was one thing Zeus never discovered. When the silver lake shattered, one memory refused to scatter. It hid itself, not in the sky, not beneath the sea, not inside a mountain. It chose something far smaller, far weaker, a human heart. On the very day the curse spread across Greece, a newborn girl opened her eyes in a tiny village near Arcadia. The midwife gasped. The baby's eyes were silver, not gray, not blue. Silver, just for a heartbeat. Then the color vanished forever. Everyone forgot they had seen it. Everyone, except one old woman. She leaned close to the infant and whispered, "I don't know why, but you remind me of someone." She tried to remember the name. It sat on the edge of her tongue, almost there. Then, it disappeared, like every other memory Zeus had stolen. But somewhere, far beyond Olympus, in a place where forgotten things still dreamed, a single voice echoed through endless darkness, soft, patient, waiting. Someone remembers. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the darkness smiled. Some dreams vanish before morning, others linger like smoke. And then, there are dreams that do not belong to the dreamer at all. Dreams that arrive from somewhere older than sleep. Dreams that have been searching for someone willing to remember. 3,000 years passed. Empires rose, empires fell. The marble temples of Greece cracked beneath rain and time. Kings became dust. Heroes became legends. Legends became myths. And myths were forgotten. The Olympians believed they had won. No one spoke Lithra's name. No one searched for the forgotten valley. No one questioned why history seemed strangely incomplete. It was exactly as Zeus had intended. Or so he believed. Far from Olympus, beyond the busy ports and crowded temples, nestled between ancient olive groves and low green hills, lay a quiet village called Thalia. It was a place forgotten by kings, a place where fishermen measured time by the tides instead of calendars, where shepherds knew every star by heart, where stories traveled farther than armies. Among its humble stone houses lived a boy named Eryx. He was 12 years old, too curious for his own good, too quiet for the other children. While others dreamed of becoming warriors, Eryx preferred abandoned ruins. While boys his age raced through fields, he wandered forgotten paths no one else noticed. People often laughed at him. "He listens to stones," they whispered. "He talks to the wind. The boy lives inside stories." Perhaps they were right, because sometimes the stories answered him. Every night, the same dream returned. A silver lake beneath a sky without stars. A woman dressed in flowing white. Her face was never clear. Her voice was always soft. She never called him by name. She only asked one question. "Do you remember?" Every morning, Eric's woke before he could answer. The dreams had begun when he was 6. At first, his parents dismissed them. Children imagine strange things. His mother smiled. You'll grow out of it. But he never did. In fact, the dreams became clearer with every passing year. Sometimes he heard distant music. Sometimes he saw shattered statues beneath vines. Sometimes he watched glowing fragments drifting through the air like fireflies. Always. The woman waited beside the silver lake. Always. She asked the same question. Do you remember? One autumn morning, Eric's decided to stop keeping the dreams to himself. He visited the oldest person in the village, an elderly storyteller named Nestor. No one knew his true age. Some claimed he had lived 100 years. Others swore he had forgotten more stories than most people would ever hear. If anyone could explain the dreams, it would be him. The old man listened quietly. He never interrupted. When Eric's finished, Nestor stared into the fire for a long time. Finally, he spoke. There are dreams, and there are memories wearing the mask of dreams. Eric's frowned. What does that mean? The old man looked uneasy. It means someone may be trying to remember through you. The words settled heavily in the room. Who? I don't know. You've never heard of a silver lake? Nestor hesitated. His eyes narrowed. For just a heartbeat, something flickered across his face. Recognition. Then, it vanished. He blinked rapidly. What were we talking about? Eric's heart sank. My dream. Oh, the old man smiled politely. Just a dream, my boy. But Eric's had seen it, for one brief moment. Nestor had remembered something. Then it was gone, as though someone had stolen the thought before it could become a memory. That night, the dream changed. For the first time, the woman spoke more than 4 words. Her voice echoed across the still waters. They're watching now. Eric's looked around. The lake had become dark. The peaceful silence was gone. Ripples spread across the water, as if something enormous moved beneath its surface. Then, the woman turned toward the distant mountains. They've noticed you. Who? She looked back at him. This time, he almost saw her face. Almost. They never stopped searching. A deafening crack split the sky. Lightning. Golden. Blinding. The woman stepped backward. No! Eric shouted. Wait! She reached toward him. Their fingertips nearly touched. Then, the dream shattered. He awoke, gasping. Outside, a real storm raged over Thalea. Rain hammered the rooftops. Thunder rolled across the hills. But something else caught his attention. Someone was standing outside his window. A figure wrapped in a dark traveling cloak. Perfectly still. Watching. Eric's froze. The stranger slowly raised one hand. Not in greeting. Not in warning. Simply pointing toward the mountains. Then lightning flashed again. For a fraction of a second, the figure disappeared. The road outside was empty. No footprints, no horse, nothing. The next morning, Eric searched the muddy road. There should have been tracks. There were none. His father laughed. You've been reading too many old tales. But Eric wasn't convinced. Someone had been there. He knew it. Days later, the village celebrated the festival of Zeus. Every autumn, people climbed the hilltop temple. They offered wine, bread, olive branches. They thanked the king of the gods for another peaceful harvest. Eric followed reluctantly. He had never liked the temple. It always felt cold. As the village priest lifted his hands in prayer, something impossible happened. A violent gust of wind burst through the sanctuary. The sacred fire went out. Statues trembled. The enormous marble image of Zeus cracked, not shattered, not broken completely, just one thin crack, running directly across the god's face. The crowd gasped. Women fell to their knees. Children cried. The priest turned pale. It is an omen. Then, every candle inside the temple extinguished at once. Darkness swallowed the room. Only one light remained, a faint silver glow. It drifted slowly through the air, like a tiny floating star. Everyone stared. The glowing fragment ignored the priest, ignored the altar, ignored the statue of Zeus. It floated straight toward Eryx before he could move. The light entered his chest. The entire temple shook. A deafening voice thundered from above, not spoken aloud, heard inside every mind. "Who remembers?" the villagers screamed. The priest collapsed. The silver light disappeared. Silence returned. Only Eryx remained standing. His heartbeat echoed like a drum. Inside his mind, a voice whispered, not loud, barely audible, yet unmistakably familiar. The first memory has found you. High above the mortal world, on Mount Olympus. The throne room fell silent. Zeus stopped speaking mid-sentence. His golden eagle suddenly cried out in terror. Athena looked toward the earth. Hermes froze. Even Apollo's sunlight dimmed. Far below, a single silver spark had awakened. Zeus rose from his throne. Impossible. After 3,000 years. Impossible. He whispered only 4 words. "Find the child." Across Greece, creatures hidden for centuries opened their eyes. An old oracle dropped her cup as forgotten visions flooded her mind. A blind poet suddenly spoke a name he did not understand. Deep beneath the earth, a stone door that had never moved, shifted just enough for silver light to escape through the crack. Something ancient was waking, far beyond Olympus, beyond the reach of thunder, beyond the memory of gods. A woman stood beside a lake that no longer existed. For the first time in 3,000 years, she smiled. Not because she was free, but because someone, finally, had begun to remember. And once memory begins to awaken, even gods cannot stop what comes next. Some secrets are buried beneath stone, some are hidden beneath oceans, but the most dangerous secrets are buried inside the human mind. Because stone can be broken, oceans can be crossed, but a forgotten memory can sleep for thousands of years before opening its eyes. And once it awakens, no god can force it back to sleep. The morning after the festival of Zeus, Thalia no longer felt like the peaceful village Eryx had always known. People spoke in whispers. Children were forbidden to leave their homes. The temple remained closed. No one dared repair the cracked face of Zeus. The priests called it blasphemy. The villagers called it a curse. Only Eryx knew. It had begun the moment the silver light entered his heart. He could feel it. Not pain, not fear. Something stranger. Sometimes he heard voices carried by the wind. Not words. Memories. A little girl laughing somewhere hundreds of years ago. An old soldier whispering his final apology before dying. A mother singing a lullaby in a language no one spoke anymore. Every breeze carried echoes. Every stone seemed alive. The world was beginning to remember through him. That same morning, high upon Mount Olympus, the gods gathered in silence. No feast, no music, no laughter. Only the distant rumble of thunder. Zeus stood before his throne. His expression was colder than winter. The fragment has awakened. No one answered. Hermes broke the silence. It could simply be a wandering memory. Zeus turned toward him. "You know that isn't true." Hermes lowered his head. He did. Athena stepped forward. Her gray eyes never left Zeus. "If one fragment has awakened, others may follow." The throne room became still. Even Ares remained silent. Zeus clenched the arm of his throne. Then they must be found and destroyed. Athena hesitated. Can memories truly be destroyed? Zeus did not answer, because deep inside, he knew they could not. Far below Olympus, beyond forests older than kingdoms, there stood a lonely temple abandoned long before anyone could remember. Its roof had collapsed centuries ago. Vines covered its marble columns. Owls nested where priests once prayed. Travelers avoided the place, not because monsters lived there, but because everyone who visited left feeling they had forgotten something important. The locals called it the temple without a name. Inside, an old woman knelt before a cracked stone altar. She wore faded blue robes. Her hair had turned completely white. She had been blind for nearly 40 years, yet people still traveled across Greece seeking her wisdom. They called her the Oracle of Ashes, because every prophecy she spoke came after burning sacred leaves whose smoke carried visions from beyond time. For 3,000 years, she had seen only darkness, until today. As the smoke curled into the air, a flash of silver exploded inside her mind. She gasped, not because she saw the future, because she remembered the past. A lake, a valley, a woman in white, silver eyes. Then, a name. One impossible name. The name Zeus had erased from history. Her lips trembled. She tried to resist. She tried to remain silent. But the memory refused to disappear. For the first time in 3,000 years, someone spoke the forbidden name aloud. Lithera. The temple shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Outside, every bird took flight at once. Across Greece, dogs began howling. The sea grew strangely still, deep beneath Mount Olympus. Ancient chains rattled. The curse had cracked. Not broken, but cracked. At that exact moment, Zeus staggered. A sharp pain pierced his head. Not physical pain, memory. Someone, somewhere, had remembered her. He whispered, "No!" Lightning erupted across the sky. The clouds blackened over all of Greece. The other gods stared in disbelief. Hermes spoke quietly. "The curse is failing." Zeus's eyes burned with fear. "No. It is awakening." Without another word, he pointed toward Hermes. "Go. Find whoever spoke her name. Leave no witness." Hermes hesitated. "Father, this is an oracle. They serve fate. If the fates wish to stop me, they should have done so 3,000 years ago." Hermes understood. This was no mission. It was an execution. By sunset, Hermes arrived at the temple without a name. The wind carried no sound. Even insects had fallen silent. He stepped carefully through broken columns. The oracle sat peacefully before the altar. She smiled. "I wondered how long it would take." Hermes froze. "You knew I was coming. I saw you before you began the journey. You know why I'm here." "I do." Hermes looked away. Unlike Ares, he had never enjoyed killing, especially not mortals. "They'll erase me," the old woman said softly. "They already have." Hermes closed his eyes. "I'm sorry." The oracle laughed quietly. "No, you are not. You are only obedient." She reached into the ashes before her. Her fingers uncovered something buried beneath the altar. A tiny silver crystal, no larger than a tear. It glowed softly. Hermes stepped backward. "What is that?" "The last untouched memory. It should not exist. Nothing truly disappears." She held the crystal toward him. "You've carried guilt for 3,000 years." Hermes stared. "How could you know that?" "Because memories speak. They told me." For the first time, Hermes' confident smile vanished. He remembered climbing the forgotten valley. He remembered standing behind Zeus. He remembered saying nothing. He remembered watching Lithera disappear. He had forgotten until now. The curse was weakening, and with every crack, the gods themselves were beginning to remember the crime they had committed. Hermes whispered, "What have we done?" The oracle smiled sadly. "The same thing every frightened ruler does. You buried the truth. And now, the truth is digging itself free." Suddenly, a bolt of lightning shattered the temple roof. Zeus had grown impatient. A voice echoed from the storm. "Hermes!" The command shook the mountains. Finish it! Hermes looked at the old woman, then at the glowing crystal, then toward the heavens. For the first time in his immortal existence, he disobeyed his father. He grabbed the silver crystal. I can't let Zeus have this. The oracle nodded. I knew you would choose correctly. Another bolt struck. The altar exploded. Stone filled the air. The oracle remained seated. She looked toward Hermes one last time. Find the boy. He carries the first memory. Protect him, because if he dies, the world forgets forever. The roof collapsed. Hermes leaped through the storm with the crystal in his hand. Behind him, the temple without a name disappeared beneath falling stone. When the dust settled, the oracle of ashes was gone. No body remained, only ashes, as if she had never existed. Far away, Eryx awoke in the middle of the night. His heart raced. A woman's voice echoed inside his mind. Not Lythra's, someone older, someone dying. Run. They know where you are. Outside, a knock echoed against his front door. 3 slow knocks. His father walked toward the entrance. Who would visit at this hour? Eryx looked through the small window. His blood turned to ice. Standing beneath the moonlight, wrapped in black cloaks, were 3 strangers. Each wore a smooth golden mask with no face, no eyes, no mouth. Only the symbol of a lightning bolt carved into the forehead. And all 3 were staring directly at him, far above. Hermes landed on a lonely mountain peak, the silver crystal hidden beneath his cloak. For centuries he had served Olympus without question. Tonight, for the first time, he chose a side, not the side of Zeus, not even the side of the gods, but the side of the truth. He looked toward the distant village of Thalaea and whispered into the wind. Hold on, Eryx. I'm coming before they do.
There are monsters that hunt with claws. There are monsters that hunt with fangs. And then, there are monsters that hunt with silence. They leave no bodies, no blood, no broken cities. They erase something far more precious. They erase the memory that you ever lived. Long before mankind learned to fear shadows, the Olympians created a different kind of darkness. A darkness that walked in daylight. A darkness that wore human faces. A darkness whose only purpose was to make the world forget. They were known by only one name, the Hunters of Oblivion. No poet ever sang of them. No temple carved their victories into stone. Even among the gods, their existence remained a secret, because Zeus had forged them on the same night Lythra disappeared. Not from heroes, not from warriors, but from forgotten souls. Souls whose names had already vanished from history. He offered them immortality. In exchange, they would become memory's executioners. Whenever someone discovered forbidden truths, the hunters arrived. By sunrise, the truth, and everyone who carried it, would simply cease to exist from the minds of the living. No funerals, no legends, no grief, because no one remembered there had ever been anyone to mourn. 3 of them now stood outside Eryx's home. They did not speak. They never needed to. Silence was their language. The tallest hunter slowly raised his hand. His knuckles touched the wooden door once more. 3 soft knocks, patient, almost polite. Inside, Eryx felt every hair on his body stand upright. His mother looked confused. Who visits at midnight? His father reached for the wooden latch. Before Eryx could think, he shouted, "Don't open it." The room froze. His father turned. "What has gotten into you?" Eryx didn't know how to explain. Only one thought echoed inside his mind. If that door opens, everything changes. Outside, the tallest hunter lowered his head. Beneath the smooth golden mask, a faint smile formed. The boy could sense them. That had not happened in centuries. Without warning, every oil lamp inside the house went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Only the fireplace continued to glow. Then, a whisper drifted through the walls. Not from outside, not from inside, from everywhere. Remember, it was Lythra. Her voice was barely more than breath. Run! The front door exploded inward, not shattered by force. It simply forgot it had ever been closed. The wooden hinges dissolved into pale dust. The hunters stepped inside. Their black robes moved without sound. Their golden masks reflected the firelight. No eyes, no mouths, no humanity. Eric's father grabbed the old iron spear hanging above the hearth. He charged. The spear struck the first hunter squarely in the chest. Nothing happened. The blade passed through the figure like mist. Then, the hunter gently touched the spear. The iron rusted, cracked, collapsed into powder, as if thousands of years had passed in a heartbeat. Eric's mother screamed. The second hunter turned toward her. He raised one finger, not as a threat, as a command. She stopped screaming. Her face became strangely calm. She blinked twice, then looked at Eric's with confusion. "Who are you?" The words struck him harder than any weapon. She no longer recognized her own son. The hunters had not harmed her. They had erased him. His father stumbled backwards. "What is happening?" The third hunter pointed toward Eric's. Slowly, the father frowned. His grip loosened. His eyes lost all recognition. The man who had raised him now stared at him as though seeing a stranger wandering into his home. Tears filled Eric's eyes. "No. Father, it's me." No answer came, because his father no longer remembered ever having a son. The first hunter finally spoke. They hesitated. His voice sounded like dry leaves scattered by the wind. "You carry what must not be remembered." Every word echoed unnaturally. "We carry what must never be forgotten." Eric's answered before fear could silence him. "Who are you?" "We are the silence after history." The hunter stretched out one gloved hand. "Come willingly. It will hurt less." Suddenly, the entire cottage shook. A silver light burst from Eric's chest. Not violently, protectively. The room filled with countless glowing fragments. Each fragment carried a forgotten memory. A child's laughter, an old prayer, a wedding song, a promise whispered beneath the stars. Thousands of lost moments circled him like living fireflies. The hunters stepped back. For the first time, they hesitated, far away. Hermes stopped running. He felt the surge instantly. The first memory. It has awakened. He launched himself into the night sky. Never in his immortal life had he flown so fast. Back inside the cottage, the silver memories formed a circle around Eric's. The hunters could not cross it. One reached forward. The instant his hand touched the glowing barrier, his black glove turned to ash. He recoiled. Impossible. Nothing had harmed a hunter in nearly 3,000 years. The tallest hunter slowly removed his golden mask. Eric's expected to see a face. There was none. Only swirling darkness, an endless emptiness, as though memory itself had been carved out. The hunter whispered, "We gave our names to Zeus." In one hand he held the silver crystal from the oracle's temple. The words sounded as though they had waited millennia to be spoken. In the other, the legendary Caduceus. For the first time in centuries, the messenger of the gods pointed his staff at servants of Olympus. The tallest hunter bowed slightly. "Lord Hermes." Hermes' voice was cold. "Stand aside. We answer only to Zeus." "And tonight," Hermes said quietly, "so do I." For a brief moment, the hunters relaxed. Then Hermes finished his sentence. But not in the way he expects. The caduceus struck the floor. Silver light erupted through the cottage. Not lightning. Memory. The forgotten memories hidden inside the crystal poured into the room. The hunters staggered. Images flooded their empty minds. Children, families, laughter, names, their own names, faces they had surrendered to Zeus 3,000 years ago. One hunter fell to his knees. Another began trembling uncontrollably. The tallest whispered, "My daughter." The words sounded as though they had waited millennia to be spoken. They remembered. Not everything, just enough. Enough to feel the horror of what they had become. Hermes lowered his weapon. "I remember you." He looked at the tallest hunter. "You were once called Theron." The hunter collapsed. The name echoed through him like thunder. "Theron," he repeated it again, as if tasting life itself. "I had forgotten." Then the sky split open. A bolt of divine lightning crashed down beside the cottage. The earth cracked. Every window shattered. A voice rolled across the valley with enough force to shake the mountains. "Hermes." The night itself seemed to tremble. "You dare defy your king." Zeus had been watching. Hermes looked toward the heavens. For the first time, there was no fear in his eyes, only regret. "I should have done this 3,000 years ago." The cottage became silent. The clouds answered with another deafening roar. The tallest hunter, Theron, rose slowly. His body was beginning to fade. Remembering his true self came at a terrible cost. The curse that sustained him was breaking apart. He looked at Hermes, then at Eryx. Finally, he knelt before the boy, not before a king, not before a god, but before hope. His hollow voice softened. Protect the memories, before the memories are forced to protect themselves. Theron's body dissolved into thousands of silver sparks. Not ashes, not darkness, memories. The other two hunters looked at each other. For the first time in 3,000 years, they recognized one another, not as soldiers, but as brothers. Without a word, they too dissolved into silver light. The cottage became silent. Eryx stared at Hermes. You knew them. Hermes nodded. I knew who they used to be. He looked down at the silver crystal. And now Zeus knows exactly where you are. The mountain shook once more. Far above, the king of the gods rose from his throne. His patience had ended. No more hunters, no more secrets, no more silence. If memory refused to stay buried, then Zeus himself would descend from Olympus. And this time, he would finish what he had started 3,000 years ago. Every road leads somewhere. Some roads lead to kingdoms. Some lead to war. Some lead home. But there was one road no map had dared to draw for over 3,000 years. A road that did not exist. A road that erased itself from every memory the moment someone looked away. The gods believed it had vanished forever. They were wrong, because forgotten roads are never truly gone. They are simply waiting for someone who still remembers how to walk them. The first light of dawn crept across the hills of Thylaea. Smoke drifted from the remains of Eryx's cottage. The villagers gathered outside. They spoke quietly. They mourned a strange tragedy. A house had been destroyed during the storm, but something was wrong. No one could remember who had lived there. One woman frowned. I feel like... She paused. Someone is missing. An old fisherman looked around the crowd. Was there always an empty space beside the well? Nobody answered. The feeling faded. Life continued. The curse still worked, only not perfectly anymore. Tiny cracks were spreading through it. Several miles away, Hermes and Eryx climbed a narrow mountain trail. Neither had spoken for hours. The silence between them felt heavier than the packs on their backs. Finally, Eryx stopped walking. I deserve the truth. Hermes kept staring ahead. You do. Then tell me. The god closed his eyes. When I finish, you may decide you hate me. They reached an old stone bridge crossing a deep gorge. No birds sang here. Only the wind whispered through broken columns left behind by a civilization older than Greece itself. Hermes rested his caduceus against the stone. 3,000 years of guilt settled onto his shoulders. I was there. Eryx looked at him. When Lethera disappeared, she spoke to gods the way a mother speaks to frightened children. The words echoed across the gorge. Hermes continued. I watched Zeus climb into the Forgotten Valley. I followed him. I believed he was protecting the world. His voice grew quieter. I never questioned him. I saw the Silver Lake. I saw every memory that ever existed. I saw Lethera. What was she like? Hermes smiled sadly. Kind, calm. She never raised her voice. She spoke to gods the way a mother speaks to frightened children. Eryx waited. Did she fight? Hermes shook his head. No. She knew violence only creates louder lies. Then why didn't she stop Zeus? Hermes looked toward the rising sun. Because she refused to become the very thing she wished to prevent. He remembered that day perfectly now. For centuries, the curse had hidden the details, but every step beside Eryx brought another memory back. I watched Zeus destroy the lake. I watched memories scatter across creation. I watched Lethera fade. And his voice broke. I did nothing. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Eryx asked the question Hermes feared most. If you regret it, why did you obey? Hermes laughed bitterly. Because I was a coward. No, you were a god. There is a difference. They continued climbing. The path grew steeper. Clouds wrapped around the mountains. The air became strangely cold. Hermes suddenly stopped. Listen. Eryx frowned. I don't hear anything. Exactly. Silence. No insects. No birds. No flowing streams. Nature itself had fallen quiet. Far above, perched upon a jagged cliff, A pair of glowing golden eyes slowly opened. Then another pair, and another. 6 enormous shapes unfolded their wings. Bronze feathers shimmered beneath the morning sun. Their beaks curved like polished blades. Talons scraped sparks from the stone. Eric stared upward. Something was watching them. What are they? Hermes' face hardened. Stymphalian hawks. They're supposed to be extinct. They were. Hermes gripped his staff. Zeus rebuilt them. The creatures did not cry out. They simply leapt. 6 shadows plunged from the sky. The air screamed around them. "Run!" Hermes shouted. The mountain exploded into chaos. Bronze feathers shot through the air like arrows. One sliced cleanly through a boulder. Another embedded itself deep into the path behind Eric's. Each feather struck with the force of a spear. Hermes raised a caduceus. A shimmering shield appeared. Hundreds of bronze feathers crashed against it. The shield held. Barely. "We can't fight them all," Eryx yelled. "We're not supposed to." Hermes answered. "We're supposed to survive." The path narrowed until sheer cliffs surrounded them. Ahead, only one way remained. A cave. Its entrance was hidden beneath hanging vines. Hermes grabbed Eryx's arm. "This way." They disappeared inside moments before another storm of bronze feathers shredded the vines behind them. Darkness swallowed them whole. Outside, the hawks circled the cave entrance, waiting, patient. They knew their prey would eventually emerge. Inside, the cave stretched far deeper than either expected. Its walls glittered faintly, not with crystals, with silver. Tiny silver veins ran through the ancient stone. Eryx touched one. Instantly, images flooded his mind. Children laughing beside the silver lake. Titans walking beneath unfamiliar stars. Lithira smiling. Then, a voice. Eryx pulled his hand away. His breathing quickened. "Hermes, the cave. It remembers." Hermes looked around slowly. Realization spread across his face. "No, it can't be." He knelt beside the glowing wall, then whispered words he had not spoken for 3,000 years. "The roots of Mnemosyne." Eryx frowned. "Who's Mnemosyne?" Hermes smiled faintly. "You are close." "The tightness of memory. The mother of the muses, and..." He hesitated. "Lithira's first teacher." The cave wasn't natural. Long before Olympus ruled the heavens, Mnemosyne had carved hidden pathways beneath Greece. Places where memories could hide from war, from fire, from time itself. Lithira had often walked these tunnels. Every wall still carried echoes of her presence. As they ventured deeper, the silver veins brightened. Soon the darkness disappeared entirely. The cave glowed like moonlight trapped beneath the earth. Then, they found it, a massive circular chamber. Its ceiling vanished into darkness. Ancient pillars surrounded a perfectly still pool of silver water. Not as large as the original lake, but unmistakably connected to it. Hermes froze. "I thought Zeus destroyed every fragment." "He almost did." A woman's voice echoed gently through the chamber. Neither of them moved. The voice came from nowhere, and everywhere. The surface of the pool rippled. Slowly, a figure emerged. Not flesh, not spirit. Silver light shaped itself into the outline of a woman. Her robes flowed like liquid moonlight. Her face remained hidden behind shimmering light, yet Eryx knew immediately. Without ever having seen her clearly, he recognized her. Lithira. The name escaped his lips before he realized he had spoken it. The chamber trembled. Hermes fell to one knee. Not because he had been forced, because after 3,000 years, he finally stood before the goddess he had failed. Lithira looked at him. There was no anger in her eyes, only sadness. "You remember." Hermes lowered his head. "I remember everything. I am sorry." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she smiled. "The weight you've carried has already been punishment enough." Hermes looked up. "You forgive me." "I forgave you before you asked." Eryx stepped closer. "Are you really here?" Lithira turned toward him. "No. This is only an echo. A memory of who I once was. My true self remains imprisoned." "Where?" She looked into the silver pool, beyond memory itself. Before Eryx could ask another question, the chamber suddenly darkened. The silver water turned black. Lithira's gentle expression vanished. She looked toward the cave entrance. "They found you." Hermes stood instantly. "That's impossible. No one knows this place." Lithira whispered. "They didn't follow you. They followed the memory." A deafening roar echoed through the tunnels. The mountain shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. Cracks spread across the chamber floor. Then, a single bolt of golden lightning pierced the mountain itself. Stone melted. The tunnel walls exploded outward. Daylight poured into the sacred chamber. Standing within the opening, surrounded by crackling thunder, was Zeus. Not as a distant voice, not as a legend, but in person. His eyes burned brighter than the sun. Lightning coiled around his hands. His presence alone bent the air. The king of Olympus had finally descended to the mortal world. He looked first at Hermes, then at Eryx. Finally, his gaze settled upon Lithira's silver reflection. For the first time in 3,000 years, Zeus and the forgotten goddess faced one another again, and the world itself held its breath.
Some battles are fought with swords, some with fire, some with thunder. But the oldest battle in existence has never needed a weapon. It is the battle between truth and fear. Because fear can silence the truth, but it can never erase it. And after 3,000 years, truth had finally found its voice again. The sacred chamber fell silent. Not a natural silence, a divine silence. Even the silver water stopped moving. The glowing walls dimmed. Time itself seemed uncertain whether it should continue. Zeus stood at the broken entrance. Lightning flowed around him like living serpents. The air smelled of rain and burning stone. Every breath Eryx took felt heavier than the last. The king of Olympus had arrived. Not as the hero carved into marble, not as the protector praised by poets, but as the man who had spent 3,000 years guarding a single lie. No one spoke. Not Hermes, not Eryx, not even Lithira. They simply looked at one another. 3,000 years of silence, resting between two immortal beings. At last, Zeus broke it. You should have stayed forgotten. His voice echoed through every stone. The mountain answered with distant thunder. Lithira's silver form remained calm. I never chose to leave. No, Zeus replied. You chose to remember. And that was enough. Hermes stepped forward. Father. Zeus did not look at him. You've disappointed me. I know. You betrayed Olympus. I betrayed fear. For the first time, Zeus turned toward his son. His eyes carried neither rage nor sorrow, only exhaustion. You still don't understand. Hermes raised the silver crystal. I understand now. No, Zeus answered quietly. You remember. They are not the same thing. Eryx watched in confusion. What does he mean? Lithira looked at the boy. There is a difference. You can remember every word and still fail to understand why they were spoken. Zeus slowly descended into the chamber. Each step caused tiny cracks to spread across the floor. I never feared your power, he said to Lithira. I feared your compassion. Eryx frowned. Compassion? Zeus continued. You believed every soul deserved the truth. I still do. And that, he whispered, would have destroyed mankind. The chamber grew colder. Images began appearing inside the silver pool. Not memories, possibilities, countless futures, flowing like rivers. Zeus pointed toward them. Look, the visions changed, kings abandoning their kingdoms after learning every empire would one day fall. Warriors refusing to defend innocent people because history would eventually forget their names. Parents refusing to bring children into a world destined to end. Cities collapsing, not through war, but through hopelessness. I saw these futures, Zeus said, the day I came to the lake. I saw civilizations surrender before they even began. I saw humanity crushed beneath the weight of absolute truth. Lithira quietly watched the visions. Then she spoke. Show him the rest. Zeus's expression hardened. There is no need. There is every need. The silver pool shimmered. The images continued. The same kings who had abandoned hope eventually found purpose again. Not because the ending changed, but because they accepted it. Children still laughed. Artists still painted. Lovers still fell in love. People built beautiful things. knowing they would someday disappear. Mortals chose meaning, not because life lasted forever, but because it didn't. Eric stared at the visions. They knew the truth, and they still lived. Lithra nodded. Hope built on truth lasts longer than hope built on illusion. Zeus looked away. I couldn't take that risk. You didn't trust them? Lithra answered gently. You only trusted yourself. The words struck harder than thunder. For the first time, Zeus had no answer. Hermes slowly lowered his caduceus. I followed you because I believed gods always knew better. He looked at Eryx. I was wrong. The chamber trembled, not from Zeus, not from Lithra, from the mountain itself. The silver veins inside the walls grew brighter. The hidden memories buried beneath Greece were awakening. One by one, they answered Lithra's voice. Far away, an old woman in Corinth suddenly remembered a lullaby her grandmother had sung. A sculptor in Athens began carving the face of a woman he had never seen. A fisherman on a distant island dreamed of a silver lake. Children across Greece woke speaking unfamiliar words. None of them understood why. But somewhere inside, the first memory had stirred. On Olympus, Athena stood alone upon a marble balcony. She watched silver lights rising from the mortal world. Each one represented a memory returning. Apollo joined her. It's happening. Athena nodded. We've delayed it.
But we were never going to stop it. Back inside the chamber, Zeus felt the change. He closed his eyes. Millions of forgotten memories brushed against his mind. For the first time in ages, he remembered faces he had erased. Priests, poets, children, entire generations. Every life touched by his curse returned. All at once, he staggered. I never wanted this, he whispered. No one mocked him. No one interrupted. Because they believed him. Lithra stepped closer. Her silver form glowed more brightly now. I know. You think I wanted worship? She asked softly. I never cared for temples. I never wanted statues. I wanted only one thing. What? Zeus asked. So that no child would ever lose the truth about who they are. The chamber became silent again. Eryx suddenly understood. Lithra had never been the goddess of memory alone. She had always been the guardian of identity. Without memory, no one knew who they truly were. Then, the silver crystal in Hermes' hand began floating. It rose slowly into the air. The chamber filled with countless glowing fragments. Hundreds, thousands, millions. Each fragment carried a single forgotten memory. They circled Lithra like stars around the moon. Her fading form grew stronger. Her voice became clearer. Her face, almost visible. Zeus stepped backward. No, his whisper carried genuine fear. She's returning. Lithra looked at him with infinite kindness. No, she smiled sadly. They are. She pointed toward the memories. Not me, the world. Suddenly, the silver fragments rushed outward. Not toward Lithra, toward Eryx. One after another, they entered his heart. His mind exploded with impossible visions. He saw the birth of Olympus, the laughter of forgotten gods, the tears of titans, the first sunrise, the last sunset yet to come. He saw every choice, every hope, every regret that humanity had ever carried. It was too much. He cried out. The mountain shook violently. Hermes tried to reach him. Eryx! But an invisible force pushed everyone back. The silver light surrounded the boy completely. Lithra whispered, "The Keeper has awakened." The words echoed across heaven. On Mount Olympus, every flame went out. The fates stopped weaving. The oracle at Delphi collapsed mid-prophecy. The sea fell perfectly still. Even the stars above Greece shifted ever so slightly. Reality itself had recognized a new keeper of memory. Zeus looked at the glowing boy, then at Lithra. A terrible realization dawned on him. He had spent 3,000 years trying to stop her return. But that had never been her plan. She never intended to reclaim her throne. She intended to pass it on. The chamber cracked from floor to ceiling. Ancient runes ignited along the walls. The silver pool began swirling like a storm. A deep voice echoed from beneath the mountain. Older than Zeus, older than the Titans, older than time itself. It spoke only one sentence. The gate remembers its keeper. The silver water split apart. A staircase, hidden for countless ages, slowly rose from the depths. It descended into endless darkness, toward a place no Olympian had entered since the dawn of creation. Lithera turned to Eryx. Her eyes were filled with both pride and sorrow. "The hardest part of your journey," she said softly, "begins below. There are places that exist on maps. There are places hidden beneath mountains. And then, there are places that exist outside the reach of time itself. Places no mortal kingdom has ever ruled. Places no god truly owns. Places that simply remember, long before Olympus crowned its first king, before Titans shaped the seas, before the stars received their names, there was a sanctuary built for only one purpose, not to protect power, not to guard treasure, but to preserve every memory that had ever lived. It was called the Library Beneath Time, and for 3,000 years, its doors had remained closed, waiting for a keeper. The ancient staircase descended into darkness, not ordinary darkness. This darkness shimmered. Tiny silver lights floated through the air like drifting snow. Except they were not snowflakes. They were memories. Each glowing spark carried a single forgotten moment. A baby's first laugh, a sailor's final prayer, a promise made beneath an olive tree, a goodbye no one had heard. They drifted silently around Eryx, as though welcoming him home. Hermes stared into the endless descent. "I've heard stories. I never believed they were real." Lithera smiled faintly. "Most stories begin as memories. They only become myths after people stop believing them." Zeus remained at the top of the staircase. For the first time in centuries, he did not move. He watched the opening below. His face revealed something Eryx had never imagined. Fear. Not fear of Lithera, not fear of battle, fear of what waited beneath. "You cannot go down there," Zeus said quietly. Lithera looked back at him. "You know why we must. If he learns, he deserves to." Zeus closed his eyes. "The truth changes everyone," Lithera answered gently. "So does a lie." Without another word, she stepped onto the staircase. Eryx followed. Hermes hesitated only a moment before joining them. Behind them, the stone steps slowly disappeared, one by one, as though the mountain itself wished to erase the path from memory. Zeus remained alone, watching, unable or unwilling to follow. The deeper they traveled, the quieter the world became. Soon, even their footsteps made no sound. Time itself seemed slower. Eryx could not tell whether minutes or centuries had passed. Then, the darkness ended. An endless city of books unfolded before them. Not shelves, mountains. Towering columns stretched farther than sight. Countless bridges connected impossible heights. Millions of glowing scrolls floated gently through the air. Ancient tablets carved from crystal rested beside books made of silver leaves. Some texts appeared older than language itself. Others had not yet been written. Above everything, instead of a ceiling, there was a sky filled with slowly turning constellations. Only these stars were not stars. Each one represented a memory still alive somewhere in the world. Whenever someone remembered a forgotten song, a star brightened. Whenever the last person forgot a story, one faded. Eryx whispered, "It's beautiful." Hermes could only nod. "I've crossed every kingdom on earth, and none compared to this." At the center of the impossible library stood a single tree. Its trunk shimmered like polished silver. Its branches stretched across the entire sky. Instead of fruit, it bore glowing glass leaves. Every leaf contained thousands of tiny moving images, entire lifetimes, entire civilizations, entire worlds. "What is it?" Eryx asked. Lithera approached the tree with quiet reverence. "The Arbor Memoria, the tree of remembrance. It has never forgotten a single soul." She gently touched the trunk. Instantly, thousands of leaves shimmered. One drifted loose, floating slowly toward Eryx. It landed in his palm. Inside the leaf, he saw himself. Not today, not yesterday, the day he was born. His mother smiling, his father laughing, a tiny silver light descending from the night sky and quietly entering his heart. Eryx stared in disbelief. "I've carried it my entire life." Lethera nodded. The first memory chose you before your first breath. But why me? The question echoed through the endless library. Lethera did not answer immediately. Instead, she pointed toward another glowing leaf. It floated down. Inside, Eric saw another child, a little girl, silver eyes, born 3,000 years earlier. The same silver light entered her heart. She smiled. Then, soldiers wearing golden masks found her. The hunters of oblivion. The vision ended. Another leaf descended. A young shepherd. Again, the silver light. Again, the hunters. Another. A poet. Another. A queen. Another. A blind musician. Again and again, across centuries, the first memory had searched for a keeper. Every one of them had been found. Every one of them had disappeared. Erix looked at Lethera. I wasn't the first. No, you are the 23rd. Silence settled over the library. Hermes lowered his head. 22, he whispered. I never knew, because Zeus made certain you wouldn't, Lethera answered. Erix looked at the glowing leaves. So why am I different? Lethera smiled. Because none of them reached the library. At that moment, a deep bell echoed through the endless halls. Not loud, yet every book trembled, every floating scroll froze, every glowing star paused. The library had sensed something, or someone. From between the towering shelves, a figure emerged, very slowly. At first, Erix thought it was another old librarian. Then he noticed something impossible. The man cast no shadow. His robes were woven from shifting pages. Letters flowed across the fabric like rivers. His beard was as white as fresh snow. His eyes were made entirely of stars. Hermes immediately knelt. I know that face, but it cannot be. Lethera bowed her head. It has been a long time. The old man smiled. Long enough for mountains to forget their own names. Erix looked between them. Who is he? Lethera answered softly. The first archivist. The keeper before me. The old man chuckled. I have held this place since before Olympus existed. His voice sounded ancient, yet strangely warm. I was here when the Titans first learned fear. I was here when Zeus was still a child. I was here when memory first learned to dream. He approached Erix. So, you are the one she chose. Erix nodded nervously. I think so. The archivist smiled. No, I already know. He placed one finger gently against Erix's forehead. The library exploded into light. Suddenly, Erix stood somewhere else. Not inside the library, not inside the mountain, but at the beginning of everything. There was no earth, no sea, no Olympus, only endless silver light, floating in silence. Then, from that light, a single heartbeat echoed. One, then another, then another. Every heartbeat became a memory. Every memory became a thought. Every thought became reality. The universe had not begun with fire. It had begun with remembrance. Erix gasped. The world was created by memory. The archivist's voice surrounded him. Not memory alone. Someone had to remember existence before existence could exist. A woman appeared within the silver light. Not Lethera. Someone older, vaster, impossible to fully see. Every star seemed to orbit her. Every heartbeat answered hers. The archivist whispered her name. Mnemosyne, the mother of memory, the first witness, the one who remembered reality into being. Erix watched as Mnemosyne gently placed a glowing seed into the emptiness. That seed grew into the tree of remembrance. Its roots stretched across creation. Its branches became time itself. Every living soul, every dream, every hope, every story grew from that single tree. Then the vision darkened. Another figure appeared, a young Zeus, kneeling before the tree, alone, afraid. The archivist sighed. This is the memory no one was ever meant to see. Young Zeus reached toward the tree, not to destroy it, to ask it a question. What happens when the last memory fades? The tree answered with a whisper. Then creation begins again. The young Zeus looked horrified. So everything ends? Everything changes. The vision dissolved. Erix found himself back inside the library. His heart pounded. He finally understood. Zeus had not hidden the truth because he hungered for power alone. He had hidden it because he believed the knowledge of an ending would destroy hope forever. The archivist looked at Erix with gentle eyes. Fear made him dangerous, but fear did not make him evil. Before Eric's could speak, the entire library shook. One shelf collapsed, then another. Books flew through the air. The stars above flickered violently. The tree of remembrance lost a glowing leaf. It drifted downward, then turned black. Lithera's expression changed instantly. No. Hermes gripped his staff. What happened? The archivist looked toward the distant entrance. His ancient voice became grave. He found another way. Far above, on Mount Olympus, Zeus stood alone beside his throne. He had not entered the library. Instead, he had summoned someone far older than the Olympians, someone he had sworn never to awaken again. Deep beneath the roots of the world, ancient chains snapped. A colossal eye slowly opened in the darkness. A voice older than creation whispered through the void. "Who dares disturb oblivion?" Zeus answered without hesitation. "I do. I need the one thing memory cannot survive." The ancient presence laughed, a sound so deep that stars trembled. "Then you seek the eater of names." The world itself shivered, because even the gods feared what had just awakened. Every creature leaves footprints. Even dragons leave bones. Even gods leave temples. But there exists one being that leaves absolutely nothing. No ashes, no ruins, no stories, because stories require someone to remember, and that creature did not destroy lives. It destroyed the memory that those lives had ever existed. It was older than Olympus, older than the Titans, older than the first sunrise. It had only one purpose: to return existence, to perfect silence. The ancients called it the Eater of Names. Far beneath the roots of the world, beyond the underworld, beyond Tartarus, beyond every prison the gods had ever built, something enormous awakened. Ancient chains, untouched since the birth of time, trembled. One by one, they snapped. A deep breath echoed through the endless darkness. Not the breath of lungs, the breath of emptiness itself. Every broken chain dissolved into black dust. Every shadow stretched toward a single point. Then, two enormous silver eyes slowly opened, except they were not truly eyes. They were empty places where memory could no longer exist. To look into them was to forget why you had been looking. The ancient being did not rise. It simply remembered that it was awake, and the universe trembled. High above, on Mount Olympus, the throne room stood empty. Only Zeus remained. The marble pillars shook as thunder rolled across the heavens. A cold wind swept through the palace. Not from the sky, from somewhere much older, the voice returned. "You seek oblivion." Zeus answered calmly. "I seek balance." A low laugh echoed across Olympus. "No, you seek control." Zeus did not deny it. "I protected this world." The unseen presence remained silent. Then, protected, the word echoed strangely, as though the ancient being had forgotten its meaning. Finally it spoke again. "Every ruler believes the cage is kindness." Zeus looked toward the mortal world below. Silver lights continued rising from Greece. More people were remembering. The curse was failing. "I have little time," the darkness answered. "Then speak your bargain." Zeus inhaled slowly. "I want the keeper." Silence. Then, "The child?" "Yes. I want the first memory erased forever." Another long silence followed. Then the ancient being whispered, "That cannot be done." For the first time, Zeus looked surprised. "I thought nothing escaped you." "Nothing escapes me," the darkness replied. "But the first memory was never created. It existed before creation. Even I cannot consume what existed before my hunger." The words settled heavily inside the empty throne room. Zeus frowned. "Then what can you do?" The answer came immediately. Everything around it. Inside the library beneath time, the first archivist stood beneath the tree of remembrance. His ancient hands rested gently upon its silver trunk. Every leaf shimmered softly. Yet one branch continued darkening. Black veins spread slowly through the bark, like poison. Hermes noticed it first. "The tree is changing." The archivist nodded. "It has begun." "What has?" "The forgetting." Eryx looked upward. "I don't understand." The old man smiled sadly. "You will." He gently touched one glowing leaf. It immediately turned black. The memory inside vanished. Not faded. Vanished, as though it had never existed. Eryx reached for another leaf. What was this memory? The archivist lowered his eyes. He stopped. His expression changed. I don't know. The realization struck everyone at once. If even the first archivist, the oldest keeper in existence, could forget, then whatever approached was unlike anything they had ever faced. Lythira closed her eyes. I had hoped he would never awaken it. Hermes looked toward her. What exactly is the Eater of Names? For the first time, the forgotten goddess hesitated. When reality was born, she began quietly. It created two forces. One remembered, the other erased. Memory gave existence meaning. Oblivion gave existence an ending. The two were never enemies, she continued. They were meant to remain apart, neither stronger than the other, neither ruling creation. So what changed? Eryx asked. Lythira's silver eyes met his. Fear. When Zeus shattered the silver lake, the balance shifted. Memory weakened. Oblivion noticed. Far beneath the world, the Eater of Names began moving. It had no body, no wings, no claws. It traveled another way. Wherever someone forgot a face, it drifted closer. Wherever an old story disappeared forever, it grew stronger. Every abandoned temple, every burned scroll, every lost language, every forgotten promise, fed it. For 3,000 years, Zeus had unknowingly been feeding the very thing he feared. Inside the library, a sudden scream echoed through the endless shelves. Hermes turned instantly. A young guardian stumbled backward. He pointed toward another librarian. Who are you?" The old librarian stared in confusion. He paused. "I don't remember." Then something impossible happened. The old librarian slowly faded, not into light, not into ash, into absence. His robes collapsed onto the floor. His books dropped beside them. But there was no body, no spirit, nothing. Hermes rushed forward. Where did he go? No one answered, because no one remembered anyone had disappeared. Only Eryx, Lythira, Hermes, and the archivist still carried enough of the first memory to notice. Eryx whispered, "He wasn't killed." Lythira nodded. "He was never allowed to have existed." Silence swept through the library, one by one. Books began losing their titles. Ink faded from ancient scrolls. Entire shelves became blank. Stories disappeared before anyone could read them. The stars above dimmed. Constellations vanished from the sky. History itself was unraveling. The tree of remembrance trembled. 3 silver leaves fell together. Before they reached the ground, they dissolved into black dust. The archivist suddenly fell to one knee. His breathing became uneven. Hermes rushed to support him. "What's wrong?" The old man looked frightened. He paused. "My name." He searched desperately. Thousands of years of memory, millions of lives, countless civilizations. Yet one simple thing escaped him. "I can't remember. My own name." For the first time, the keeper before Lythira, the oldest librarian in existence, forgot who he was. Eryx's chest began glowing. The silver light burst outward instinctively. Every blackened leaf nearby regained its color. The fading stars brightened. Blank books slowly restored their words. Only for a moment, but it was enough. The archivist looked at Eryx. Wonder filled his ancient eyes. He smiled weakly. "You are not protecting memories. You are becoming them." Before Eryx could answer, a loud crack echoed through the library. The great entrance, sealed for thousands of years, slowly opened. Cold darkness poured inside. Not smoke, not shadow, absence. Everything it touched lost its color. Silver became gray, gold became white, light became empty. Footsteps echoed, except there was no one walking, only the sound. Step, step, step. Each footstep erased another memory from the library. A shelf vanished, a bridge disappeared, a constellation blinked out forever. Hermes gripped his caduceus. "There is nothing there," Lythira whispered. "Exactly." Then, a voice drifted through the endless halls. Soft, gentle, almost comforting. "Do not be afraid. You have already forgotten why you feared me." Eryx looked toward the darkness. For a single heartbeat, he almost couldn't remember his own name. His mother's face blurred. His village faded. Even Lythira's image began slipping away. Then, a warm hand rested gently on his shoulder. "Lythira." "Hold on," she whispered. "Speak your name." "Eryx." His voice shook. Louder. "Eryx." The silver light around him flared brighter. The memories returned. Lethera smiled. Names are anchors. As long as you remember who you are, it cannot claim you. The darkness stopped moving. The unseen presence seemed interested. Its gentle voice echoed once more. Then let us begin. A single hand emerged from the void. Not flesh, not bone. A hand made entirely of shifting black mist, covered in thousands of fading names. As it reached into the library, the tree of remembrance cried out. For the very first time, the tree made a sound, and every memory in existence heard it. Every tree grows from a seed. Every kingdom grows from an idea. Every legend grows from a story. But there was one tree that grew from a promise older than the stars, a promise spoken before the first sunrise, a promise so ancient that even the gods had forgotten it. Only the tree of remembrance still carried its echo. And when that promise was threatened, the tree did something it had never done before. It cried. The sound spread across creation, not through the air, through memory itself. Every living creature paused. Birds stopped singing. Wolves froze in silent forests. The sea became perfectly still. Even the winds over Olympus forgot how to blow. It was not a scream. It was grief. The grief of every forgotten life. Becoming one voice. Inside the library beneath time, the silver branches trembled. Crystal leaves fell like rain. Each leaf contained a forgotten life. A baker whose bread had comforted a lonely village. A child who had rescued an injured bird. A soldier who had refused to burn an innocent home. Thousands, millions of ordinary souls. Not kings, not heroes, just people. The tree remembered them all. And now, it feared losing them forever. The darkness advanced. It had no face, no body, only the shape of absence. Where it moved, colors faded, voices became whispers, memories unraveled into silence. The library itself began to forget its own halls. Bridges disappeared behind Hermes. Entire towers dissolved into blank mist. Books opened, only to reveal empty pages. Hermes tightened his grip on the caduceus. We're losing the library. The first archivist answered quietly, no. We're losing ourselves. Another branch turned black, then another. Silver bark cracked. Dark veins spread across the trunk like frozen rivers. The tree groaned again. The sound was deeper this time. Older. Almost. Human. Eric stepped toward it. I can hear it. Lethera nodded. It is speaking to you. What is it saying? She closed her eyes. It remembers something. None of us do. The Eater of Names stopped beneath the tree. Its mist-like hand reached upward. Not in anger, almost, with curiosity. Its gentle voice echoed through the endless library. You have carried them long enough. Let them rest. One black finger touched the silver bark. Instantly, 1,000 leaves turned to ash. Stars vanished from the ceiling. Somewhere in the mortal world, an old woman forgot the face of her husband. A father forgot the lullaby he had sung every night. A sculptor stared at a statue, unable to remember who he had carved. Across Greece, memory began collapsing like a city built on sand. Eryx cried out, no, without thinking. He placed both hands against the tree. Silver light erupted from his chest. Not like lightning, not like fire, like dawn, warm, gentle, endless. The black stain stopped spreading, only for a moment, but the tree breathed again. The Eater tilted its unseen head. Interesting, you carry remembrance. Its voice softened. How long before remembrance carries you? Eryx ignored it. He focused on the tree. The silver bark beneath his hands felt alive. A heartbeat echoed through him. Then another. Suddenly, the library disappeared. He stood somewhere else, not beneath the mountain, not within time. He stood in a vast silver meadow beneath an endless sky. There were no stars, no sun, only light. Waiting before him were two figures. One was Mnemosyne, the mother of memory. The other was someone he had never seen, a figure cloaked in gentle darkness, not terrifying, not cruel, calm, silent, ancient. Mnemosyne smiled. You've come sooner than I expected. Eryx looked at the second figure. Who are you? The dark figure answered. I am Oblivion. Eryx stepped back. The Eater of Names? The figure shook its head. No. The eater is only my wound. Silence stretched across the silver field. Mnemosyne approached. In the beginning, there were only two of us. I remembered. She looked toward the dark figure. And my brother allowed forgotten things to rest. Oblivion smiled sadly. I never hated memory. I gave it meaning. If nothing could ever end, nothing could ever be treasured. Eryx frowned. Then why does the eater destroy everything? Oblivion lowered its eyes. Because I no longer control it. The meadow darkened. A memory unfolded around them. Long before Zeus, long before Titans, a brilliant silver river flowed through the newborn universe. Beside it, memory and oblivion worked together. When a flower withered, memory preserved its beauty. Oblivion gently returned its body to silence. Nothing was lost. Nothing was hoarded. Everything remained in balance. Then, the vision changed. Zeus shattered the silver lake. Memory scattered. Balance broke. Something inside Oblivion began to starve. Its natural peace twisted into endless hunger. That hunger became the Eater of Names. It was never born evil, Mnemosyne whispered. It became lost. Eryx stared in disbelief. The Eater isn't our enemy? Oblivion answered quietly. No, it is my grief. The vision shattered. Eryx returned to the library. Only a heartbeat had passed, yet tears filled his eyes. He understood now. The battle was never between good and evil. It was between balance and fear. Hermes looked at him. What did you see? Eryx turned toward the advancing darkness. We've been fighting the wrong thing. Zeus suddenly appeared at the far end of the library. Lightning exploded around him. I warned you. His voice thundered. There is no reasoning with Oblivion. Eryx faced the king of gods. There isn't, but there may be reasoning with its pain. Zeus stared. For the first time, he truly looked at the boy. Not as an enemy, not as a threat, but as someone willing to attempt what he himself never had. The Eater continued advancing. Its darkness now touched the lowest branches of the tree. Another wave of memories vanished. Children across Greece suddenly forgot the names of their grandparents. Poets lost entire epics. Ancient languages disappeared forever. The world was unraveling. The first archivist struggled to stand. His face had grown pale. My time is ending. Hermes rushed to him. No. The old keeper smiled. It is simply changing. He placed an ancient key into Eryx's hand. It was made of silver wood, warm to the touch. The heart vault, he whispered. It lies beneath the roots. There, the first promise still sleeps. Lethera's eyes widened. I thought it was only a legend. So did I. The archivist smiled faintly. Until now, suddenly, the tree shook violently. The ground beneath its roots cracked open. A hidden doorway slowly emerged, not carved by hands, grown, like part of the tree itself. Ancient symbols glowed softly across its surface. Eryx instinctively placed the silver key into the lock. The door opened. A warm golden light spilled into the library. Not silver, not white, gold. Gentle, peaceful, older than memory, older than forgetting. From deep within the hidden chamber, a single heartbeat echoed. Slow, steady, alive. The Eater of Names stopped. For the first time, it hesitated. Its mist recoiled, as though it recognized the heartbeat, or feared it. Mnemosyne's distant voice echoed through Eryx's mind. The promise remembers them both, memory and oblivion. Zeus took one step forward. His face had lost all color. He whispered something almost no one heard. No, it still exists. The ancient heartbeat echoed once more, stronger this time. The entire tree of remembrance blazed with silver light. Every blackened leaf paused between decay and renewal. Even the stars above the library held their breath, because behind that hidden door waited the one secret neither gods nor titans had ever truly understood. The promise that had once united memory and oblivion, before fear tore them apart. And for the first time since the dawn of creation, before there were gods, there were choices. Before there were kingdoms, there were promises. Because a promise is simply a memory, waiting for the future. And the oldest promise ever spoken had never been broken. It had only been forgotten. The golden doorway stood open. Its warm light spilled across the library beneath time. Where the light touched, blackened leaves regained their silver glow. Blank pages slowly filled with words once more. The darkness surrounding the Eater of Names pulled back. Not in defeat, in recognition, as if something inside the ancient creature remembered this place. Long before it became hunger, no one moved. Not Hermes, not Zeus, not Lithera. Even the tree of remembrance grew still, waiting. Only Eryx stepped forward. The silver key in his hand dissolved into tiny sparks. Its purpose had ended. The door had accepted its keeper. As he crossed the threshold, the world disappeared. No library, no mountain, no sky. Only endless golden light, warm, gentle, peaceful. The silence here did not feel empty. It felt complete. A narrow path stretched ahead. It wasn't made of stone. It was woven from countless glowing threads. Every thread shimmered with memories. The first laugh of a child, the final smile of an old woman, the courage of a lonely sailor, the kindness of a stranger. Every beautiful moment that had ever existed flowed beneath Eryx's feet. At the end of the path sat a simple wooden bench, nothing divine, nothing grand, just an ordinary bench beneath a young silver tree. An old man waited there. He wore plain robes. His hands were rough with age. His face carried gentle wrinkles. He looked completely human. The old man smiled. "I've been waiting." Eryx looked around. "Who are you?" The old man chuckled. "I've had many names. Most have been forgotten." He stood slowly. But the first one was Promise. Eryx frowned. "Promise?" The old man nodded. "I was never a god. I was never a titan. I was simply the first being who kept his word." The young keeper didn't understand. The old man walked toward the silver tree. When the universe awakened, memory and oblivion feared each other. They believed one must destroy the other. So they came here. He gently touched the trunk, and they asked me to witness an agreement. The air shimmered. The past unfolded around them. Mnemosyne stood beneath the tree. Beside her, the gentle figure of oblivion. Neither carried weapons. Neither wore crowns. Only quiet hope. Promise spoke aloud. "So that life may exist, what do you offer one another?" Mnemosyne answered first. "I promise to remember every life." Oblivion smiled. "And I promise to let every life rest." Promise nodded. "And together?" The two ancient beings spoke as one. "We promise that nothing loved will ever truly be lost." The vision dissolved. Eryx stared silently. "That was all?" Promise smiled. "It was enough. If memory remembers forever, and oblivion lets suffering end, life remains balanced." He looked toward Eryx. "But balance requires trust, and Zeus broke it," Eryx whispered. Promise shook his head gently. "No, fear broke it." Zeus merely listened. Back inside the library, the golden heartbeat echoed again. The Eater of Names stood motionless. Its endless darkness trembled. A faint silver glow flickered deep inside its shadow, like a forgotten star, trying to shine. Lithera watched carefully. "It remembers," Hermes whispered. "Can it truly be healed?" She answered honestly. "I don't know. No keeper has ever tried." Zeus tightened his fists. "Do not trust it. It will consume him." His voice carried certainty, but beneath that certainty was guilt. Hermes looked at his father. "When was the last time you trusted anyone?" Zeus said nothing. Inside the heart vault, Promise handed Eryx a small object. It was no larger than a pebble, clear as crystal. Yet inside it, two tiny lights circled each other. One silver, one black, neither stronger, neither weaker. "What is this?" Eryx asked. "The first promise." Promise answered. "It is not a weapon. It cannot destroy. It can only remind." "Remind who?" "The one who has forgotten." Eryx carefully held the crystal. It felt strangely familiar, as though it had always belonged in his hands. Promise's smile slowly faded. "There is something I never told Lithera. There is something even Mnemosyne does not know." Eryx's heart quickened. "What?" Promise looked toward the distant golden horizon. "The keepers were never meant to protect memory." Silence. "They were meant to protect the friendship between memory and oblivion." The words echoed endlessly. Everything Eryx believed shifted. The keepers were never soldiers, never guardians of knowledge alone. They were peacemakers, bridge builders, the last hope whenever balance failed. "Then why choose me?" Promise asked a question instead. When your mother forgot your face, did you stop loving her? Eric's eyes filled with tears. No. When the hunters erased your father, did you stop calling him father? No. You remembered love, even when memory failed. Promise smiled warmly. That is why, outside, the tree of remembrance suddenly burst into radiant silver light. Its roots spread deeper into the library. The golden doorway widened. Warm light poured outward. The Eater of Names slowly stepped toward it. Not aggressively, curiously, like a lost child hearing a familiar lullaby. The darkness surrounding it began peeling away. Tiny fragments drifted into the air. Inside those fragments, Hermes saw faces, thousands of them, every forgotten soul the Eater had consumed. They had never been destroyed, only trapped, waiting. Lethera gasped softly. They're still alive, in memory. Zeus stared in disbelief. Impossible. For 3,000 years, he had believed everything consumed by oblivion was gone forever. He had been wrong. The Eater stopped only a few steps from the golden doorway. It reached out its mist-covered hand. The golden light touched its fingers. The darkness hissed, not in pain, in sorrow. Then, for the very first time, the Eater spoke with its true voice. Not the whisper of emptiness, not the echo of oblivion. A gentle voice, ancient, lonely, broken. It whispered one word, brother. Deep inside the heart vault, oblivion suddenly appeared beside Eric's. The peaceful figure looked toward the doorway. Tears shimmered in his eyes. My grief remembers me. Promise nodded. It always would. The golden chamber trembled, not from fear, from reunion. The crystal in Eric's hand grew brighter. The silver and black lights inside it finally touched. The instant they met, a wave of warmth spread through creation. Across Greece, people remembered forgotten songs. Lost names returned. Ancient stories resurfaced in dreams. Old enemies embraced without knowing why. Children laughed at jokes never spoken aloud. The world inhaled, as though waking from a very long sleep. But the peace lasted only a heartbeat. A deafening crack split the library from end to end. The tree of remembrance cried out once more. Only this time, not from grief, from warning. The stars above shattered like glass. The constellations disappeared. Golden light flickered violently. Even Promise looked upward. His calm expression vanished. No, he whispered. It has begun. Eric's turned. What has? Promise answered with a voice heavy with sorrow. The universe remembers that it was broken, far beyond Olympus, beyond the stars, beyond memory, beyond oblivion. Something ancient opened its eyes. Not a god, not a titan, not even a force. It was the silent law that governed all creation, the law that demanded balance. For 3,000 years, it had waited, patiently, watching. Now, the balance had finally shifted, and the universe itself had come to judge. Some believe justice is written by kings. Others believe it belongs to the gods. But both are mistaken. Because long before the first throne was built, long before the first prayer reached the heavens, there was already something listening. Not with ears, not with eyes, but with balance. It did not reward, it did not punish, it simply remembered whether creation remained whole. And when that balance was broken, it always came. Not in anger, not in mercy, only in truth. The stars vanished. Not one by one, all at once. The endless sky above the library beneath time became perfectly empty. There was no darkness, no light, no color, only stillness. The kind of stillness that existed before the universe had chosen to exist. Every heartbeat stopped. Hermes reached for his pulse. Nothing. Zeus tried to summon lightning. None answered. Even the tree of remembrance stood motionless. Its leaves hung frozen in the air. Time itself had paused. Only Eryx remained able to move. The crystal of the first promise glowed warmly within his hands. Promise stood beside him. So, the old man whispered, it has finally awakened. The empty sky slowly cracked. Not like glass, like silence breaking. A single line of golden light appeared above the library. Then another. Then thousands. Together they formed something impossible. Not a doorway. Not a throne. A pair of enormous scales. They stretched farther than sight. One side shimmered with silver light, the other, with gentle darkness, memory, oblivion, perfectly balanced. No voice announced its arrival, no trumpet sounded. Creation had no need for introductions. It simply was. Then, a figure stepped from the light. No one could tell whether it was a man or a woman, young or ancient. Its form changed every time someone looked. Sometimes it appeared as an old shepherd, sometimes as a child, sometimes as a queen, sometimes as a nameless traveler. Every soul saw something different, because creation reflected the one who looked upon it. Eric's alone saw a simple storyteller, wrapped in plain robes, holding an unfinished book. The figure smiled. Keeper. Its voice sounded like every voice Eric's had ever loved. You have opened the first promise. Yes. Then the judgment may begin. Zeus stepped forward. I accept responsibility. Creation turned toward him. No. Its answer was calm. You accept consequence. Responsibility comes first. Hermes lowered his head. The words pierced deeper than any spear. Creation looked toward Lithera, daughter of memory. She bowed. You carried silence with grace. I carried hope. Lithera answered. Creation nodded. Then looked toward the Eater of Names. The creature stood quietly beside the golden doorway. Its darkness no longer spread. Its lonely silver eyes remained fixed upon the scales. You remember me, Creation said gently. The Eater's voice trembled. I remember enough to know I have forgotten. Creation smiled sadly. Then there is still hope. The great scales began to move. The silver side lowered. The dark side rose. Memory outweighed oblivion. The imbalance was visible. For the first time, everyone understood. The universe itself was wounded. Promise whispered. This is what Zeus never saw. Zeus stared at the scales. They're wrong. Creation looked at him. No. You made memory carry everything. You feared loss. So you refused to let oblivion carry its share. The words echoed across the library. Eric suddenly understood. Zeus had not merely imprisoned Lithera. He had forced memory to bear every grief, every regret, every forgotten sorrow, while oblivion, the force meant to gently lay pain to rest, had been denied its purpose. It had starved. Its starvation had become hunger. Its hunger had become the Eater of Names. Zeus closed his eyes. For the first time in countless ages, he saw his own mistake completely, not through fear, not through pride, through truth. I thought, he whispered, I was saving the world. Creation answered softly. You saved it for a little while, and condemned it for much longer. No one spoke, not because Zeus had been defeated, but because everyone recognized something deeply human within him. He had done terrible things, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Hermes stepped beside his father. I spent centuries believing obedience was virtue. Zeus looked at him. Hermes continued, but obedience without wisdom creates tragedy. Zeus nodded slowly. I know. The scales trembled again, still unbalanced, still waiting. Creation turned toward Eryx. Keeper, the universe asks one question. Can memory forgive? Eryx looked at Lithera. She smiled gently. I forgave long ago. Creation continued. Can oblivion forgive? The Eater lowered its head. Its mist trembled. It paused. I no longer remember how. The library fell silent. Promise sighed. This is why the keepers exist. Eryx stepped toward the ancient creature. Everyone shouted at once. No. Hermes reached for him. Zeus raised his hand. Lithera's eyes widened, but Eryx kept walking. He stopped only an arm's length away from the Eater of Names. The creature looked down. Its endless darkness swirled uncertainly. Eryx slowly extended the crystal of the first promise. I can't erase your pain, he said quietly. I can't undo what happened. But, he smiled, you don't have to carry it alone anymore. The library became perfectly silent. The Eater stared at the crystal. Then, very carefully, it reached forward. Its mist-covered hand touched Eryx's. The first promise glowed brighter than the birth of a star. Suddenly, every forgotten soul trapped within the Eater appeared. Millions of silver figures filled the library. Children, mothers, artists, sailors, dreamers. Ordinary people from every age. None were angry. None sought revenge. They simply remembered. One little girl stepped forward. She looked no older than 7. She smiled at the eater. "You've been lonely." The ancient creature began to shake. Its darkness cracked. Silver light poured through the fractures. The library echoed with a sound no one expected. The eater was crying, not tears of water, tears of forgotten names. One by one, the names covering its shadow returned. Thousands, then millions, every name spoken aloud by the souls it had unknowingly imprisoned. Theron, Alethea, Damon, Ionin, Cassian, Melia, Nikos, Helene. Thousands more followed. Each name became a tiny silver bird. Each bird flew upward into the tree of remembrance. Black branches blossomed again. Dead leaves returned. Lost constellations reappeared overhead. The universe breathed. The great scales slowly moved. Silver rose. Darkness descended. Until, for the first time in 3,000 years, both sides stood perfectly level. Creation smiled. Balance. Golden light spread beyond the library, across Greece, across the seas, across every land beneath the stars. People remembered what should be remembered, and gently released what was meant to rest. Grief no longer chained them. Joy no longer faded. Life could finally become whole again. Zeus fell to one knee, not before creation, before Lethera. "I cannot undo what I took." His voice was quiet. "But if forgiveness truly exists, I ask for it." Lethera stepped forward. She placed one hand upon his shoulder. "I forgive you." Zeus closed his eyes. Tears, real tears, fell onto the ancient stone. Not because he had been absolved, but because after 3,000 years, he had finally allowed himself to grieve. Creation watched in silence. Then, its unfinished book closed. The judgment is complete. But just as the golden light began to fade, the tree of remembrance shivered once more. Not in fear, not in pain, in warning. Promise looked sharply toward the roots. His peaceful smile disappeared. "Impossible." Eric's frowned. "What is it?" Promise whispered only 4 words. "The story isn't finished." Far beneath the restored roots of the tree, deeper than the heart vault, hidden beneath layers of forgotten ages, a single ancient door slowly opened. It had no lock, no key, no inscription, only one symbol, a circle, with nothing inside it. From the darkness beyond, a child laughed, not cruelly, not kindly, simply, curiously, and every immortal present, Zeus, Hermes, Lethera, Promise, even creation itself, turned toward the sound, because none of them remembered there had ever been a child. Before there were stories, there was silence. Before there was silence, there was possibility. And before possibility, there was a question, not spoken, not written, simply wondered. Every universe begins with an answer, but no one ever asks where the first question came from, because the first question was asked by a child no one remembered, not because the child had been forgotten, but because the child had existed before memory itself. The laughter echoed once more. Soft, curious, innocent, it carried no malice, no sorrow, yet every immortal in the library beneath time stood perfectly still. Even creation did not move. The ancient door beneath the roots slowly opened wider. Golden light flowed inward. Darkness flowed outward. Neither overcame the other. They simply passed one another, like 2 old friends meeting after a very long journey. From within the doorway, tiny footprints appeared upon the stone floor. Not visible, felt. Every step awakened something inside those who watched. Hermes suddenly remembered the feeling of wonder he had known before becoming a god. Lethera remembered the first mortal child who had ever smiled at her. Zeus remembered a time before he had worn a crown. Even the Eater of Names remembered what it had felt like, not to be hungry. Then, the child emerged, no older than 8, barefoot, wearing a simple white tunic stitched with tiny silver threads. Dark hair rested gently upon small shoulders. The child's eyes were unlike anything Eric's had ever seen. One eye reflected endless stars. The other reflected complete emptiness, creation, and the unknown beyond it, balanced perfectly. The child looked around the library, not with surprise, with recognition, as though returning home. Then, the child smiled. "You're all taller." Hermes blinked. He paused. I've never met you. The child tilted a head. Haven't you? Hermes searched his mind. Thousands of years, millions of memories, nothing. Yet his heart insisted otherwise. The child walked directly toward the tree of remembrance. Every silver leaf bowed gently. Not from wind, from respect. Promise stepped forward. His face had become pale. I never believed. You truly existed. The child laughed softly. You stopped believing. I never stopped existing. Eric's finally found his voice. Who are you? The child looked at him. I've had many names. Then the smile faded. But no one has spoken them. For a very long time, creation quietly closed its unfinished book. Something Eric's had never imagined happened next. Creation bowed, not deeply, just enough to acknowledge an equal. Zeus whispered. Even creation. Promise nodded. Yes. The child looked embarrassed. You don't have to do that. Creation smiled. Old habits. Silence settled once more. Eric's looked between them. I still don't understand. Promise inhaled slowly. There are three forces that every living thing knows. He raised one finger. Memory. A second. Oblivion. A third. Time. The child shook a head. No. There were four. The library became so quiet that the turning of a single page sounded like thunder. What was the fourth? Eric's whispered. The child answered with one simple word. Wonder. The word drifted through the library. Every book shimmered. The tree glowed brighter. Even the stars above seemed to lean closer. Promise closed his eyes. I should have remembered. The child smiled gently. You couldn't. Wonder cannot be remembered. It can only be experienced. Hermes frowned. What does that mean? The child pointed toward a nearby silver leaf. Can you remember your very first moment of amazement? Hermes tried. Nothing came. I can't. Exactly. You remember being amazed. You cannot remember how amazement itself was born. Lithera watched quietly, slowly. Understanding dawned. Memory preserves, she whispered. Oblivion releases. Time carries. She looked at the child. And wonder. The child finished her sentence. Begins. Creation spoke for the first time since the judgment. Before there could be memory. There first had to be curiosity. Someone had to ask, what if? The child giggled. I asked a lot of questions. A warmth spread through the library. Not magical, comforting. Every soul present felt briefly like a child again. For one heartbeat, the universe seemed infinitely possible. Then, the warmth faded. The child looked toward the restored eater of names. You've been hurting. The ancient being lowered its head. I have. I'm sorry. The child hugged it. Without hesitation, without fear, the endless darkness trembled. Not from pain, from relief. No one had embraced it. Since before the stars were born. Eric smiled. Perhaps the battle truly was over. Then the child suddenly looked upward. The smile disappeared. Oh, the single word carried unexpected sadness. The library shook, not violently, softly, like a house settling after winter. The child stepped away from the eater. They found me. Zeus frowned. Who? The child's answer chilled every immortal present. The ones who came before creation. Even creation's peaceful expression changed. For the first time, the storyteller looked afraid. That's impossible. Creation whispered. They never awaken. The child slowly turned toward the endless sky above the library. They don't awaken. They remember. Without warning, every star overhead went dark. Again. But this time, the darkness did not come from oblivion. It came from beyond the stars themselves. A sound rolled across existence. Not thunder, not wind. Pages turning. Billions of pages. The tree of remembrance began dropping leaves. Not silver, not black. Blank. Perfectly blank. Promise looked upward in horror. The unwritten. Hermes looked at him. What are the unwritten? Promise answered with a trembling voice. They are the stories that never happened. The blank leaves touched the floor. Instantly, new possibilities appeared around them. Entire lives that had never existed. Cities that had never been built. Heroes who had never been born. Wars that had never been fought. Reality itself began multiplying, not breaking, branching. Erix felt dizzy. He saw hundreds of versions of himself. A fisherman, a king, a poet, a shepherd, a lonely old man, a child who had never met Lithera. Each possibility shimmered around him, each one equally real. The child reached for Eric's hand. You have to choose. Choose what? Which story survives? Before Eric's could answer, the unfinished book in creation's hands opened by itself. Every page turned blank. The words vanished. The storyteller stared silently, then whispered, I no longer know which history is true. The universe had survived fear. It had survived forgetting. But now, it faced something even more dangerous, infinite possibility. Because if every story became true, then no story would mean anything at all. The child looked at Eric's. The stars reflected gently within those impossible eyes. I asked the first question, the child whispered, but only you can choose the first answer. Every life is a story. Every story begins with a choice, but there are also the choices never made, the roads never taken, the words never spoken, the dreams abandoned before they were born. Those stories do not disappear. They wait, patiently, just beyond reality, waiting for someone to imagine them. For thousands of years, the universe had protected only one history. Now, every forgotten possibility was trying to become real. The library beneath time transformed before their eyes. Its endless shelves no longer stood still. They multiplied. 1 became 10, 10 became 1,000. Each shelf carried a different version of existence. A world where Troy never fell. A world where Atlantis survived. A world where the Titans ruled with kindness instead of fear. A world where mortals had never invented war. A world where Olympus had never invented war. The tree of remembrance trembled. Its silver leaves mixed with blank ones. Memory and possibility were becoming impossible to separate. Creation looked down at the unfinished book in its hands. Every sentence had vanished. Every chapter was empty. For the first time since the dawn of existence, even the storyteller had no story to tell. This cannot continue, creation whispered. If every possibility becomes reality, reality itself will cease to have meaning. The child before memory nodded. Every question deserves many answers. The child's voice remained gentle. But eventually, someone must choose. Eric stared at the countless worlds unfolding around him. Each felt real. Each carried joy. Each carried sorrow. None were false, yet all of them could not exist together. Suddenly, one vision pulled him closer. He saw himself as a young fisherman. His parents were alive. His mother laughed as she'd baked fresh bread. His father taught him how to mend fishing nets beneath the morning sun. There was no silver light, no Lethera, no forgotten goddess, only an ordinary life, peaceful, beautiful. His mother smiled toward him. Eric's. Breakfast is ready. For one impossible heartbeat, he wanted to step into that life, to forget everything. A hand gently touched his shoulder. Lethera, do you wish it had been true? Eric smiled sadly. Every part of me does. He looked back at the vision. But it isn't my story. The peaceful world faded into silver mist. Across the library, Hermes found himself standing before another possibility. A young Zeus sat beneath an olive tree. No crown, no throne, no lightning, only a father laughing with his children. Hermes slowly approached. This is what you wanted. The vision of Zeus smiled. I never wanted to rule. I wanted the storms to end. The image vanished. Hermes closed his eyes. For the first time, he truly understood the burden his father had carried. Not far away, Zeus faced a different world, one where he had trusted Lethera. The silver lake still shimmered. Mortals remembered every truth. They also mourned every loss. Yet they endured. They loved. They built. They hoped. The world had not fallen. It had flourished. Zeus reached toward the vision. His fingers passed through empty air. He whispered, I was wrong. The words were carried away like leaves in autumn. The child watched silently. Regret, the child said softly, is simply another unwritten story. Meanwhile, the restored Eater of Names wandered among the endless shelves. Every blank book it touched, filled with words. Not because it was consuming them, because it was finally remembering how to let stories rest, without destroying them. The darkness surrounding it continued to fade. His mother laughed as she'd baked fresh bread. His father taught him how to mend fishing nets beneath the morning sun. There was no silver light, no Lethera, no forgotten goddess, only an ordinary life, peaceful, beautiful. His mother smiled toward him. Eric's. Breakfast is ready. For one impossible heartbeat, he wanted to step into that life, to forget everything. A hand gently touched his shoulder. Lithera, do you wish it had been true? Eric smiled sadly. Every part of me does. He looked back at the vision. But it isn't my story. The peaceful world faded into silver mist. Across the library, Hermes found himself standing before another possibility. A young Zeus sat beneath an olive tree. No crown, no throne, no lightning. Only a father laughing with his children. Hermes slowly approached. This is what you wanted. The vision of Zeus smiled. I never wanted to rule. I wanted the storms to end. The image vanished. Hermes closed his eyes. For the first time, he truly understood the burden his father had carried. Not far away, Zeus faced a different world, one where he had trusted Lithera. The silver lake still shimmered. Mortals remembered every truth. They also mourned every loss. Yet they endured. They loved. They built. They hoped. The world had not fallen. It had flourished. Zeus reached toward the vision. His fingers passed through empty air. He whispered, I was wrong. The words were carried away like leaves in autumn. The child watched silently. Regret, the child said softly, is simply another unwritten story. Meanwhile, the restored Eater of Names wandered among the endless shelves. Every blank book it touched, filled with words. Not because it was consuming them, because it was finally remembering how to let stories rest, without destroying them. The darkness surrounding it continued to fade. Little by little, Promise smiled. The wound is healing. Then, the library shook violently. Not from the unwritten, from the tree. A deep crack echoed through its silver trunk. Everyone turned. A large branch had split in two. The wound glowed with strange white light. Not silver, not black, not gold. White, pure, silent. The first archivist stepped closer. His ancient face grew pale. No, it cannot be. Eric's rushed toward him. What is it? The old keeper placed a trembling hand against the broken branch. The tree cannot carry every possibility. It was never meant to. The child before memory nodded sadly. The tree remembers. It does not choose. Creation finally looked at Eric's. And that is why there must always be a keeper. The words settled heavily over the library. Eric's looked around. So, I decide. Creation answered gently. No, you do not decide which world is best. You decide which world is true. But how? Eric's asked. What if I choose wrong? Lithera stepped beside him. There is no perfect choice. There is only the honest one. Eric's looked once more at the impossible worlds surrounding him. He saw kingdoms without suffering. He saw worlds without death. Worlds where no child cried. Worlds where no one felt loneliness. They were beautiful, yet strangely empty, because without loss. Kindness had no courage. Without endings, love had no urgency. Without uncertainty, hope had no purpose. He finally understood what Lithera had been protecting all along. Not perfect memories, honest ones. The child smiled. You're beginning to see. Then the child walked toward the broken tree. Very gently, a small hand rested against the white crack. Instead of healing, the crack widened. Everyone gasped. Why? Hermes shouted. The child looked back with tears in gentle eyes. Because the tree isn't breaking. It's opening. The silver bark slowly unfolded like petals. Hidden within the ancient trunk rested a single glowing seed, no larger than a heartbeat. Inside it, every color imaginable swirled together. Memory, oblivion, time, wonder, perfectly united. Promise fell to one knee. The seed of the next story. Creation quietly finished the sentence. Every universe must eventually choose whether to end or begin again. Silence consumed the library. Eric's looked at the tiny seed. Does this mean our world is ending? Creation smiled. No. This story is, for the first time, everyone understood. Not the world, not existence. Their journey, the age of fear that began 3,000 years ago, was finally approaching its final page. Zeus stepped beside Eric's. No thunder, no crown, only humility. I cannot ask you to forgive my choices. He looked at the glowing seed. But I ask one thing. What? Eric's replied. When this story ends, Do not let fear write the next one. Before Eric's could answer, the seed suddenly floated into the air. Its light spread across the library. Every unwritten world froze. Every possible future became perfectly still. The seed had chosen, not a world, a keeper. It drifted slowly toward Eric's. Then, it disappeared into his heart. The library erupted in radiant light. The tree of remembrance blossomed brighter than ever before. The great scales of creation appeared overhead one final time, perfectly balanced. Creation closed the unfinished book. At last, words returned to its pages. Only one chapter remained unwritten. The last one. The child before memory looked at Eric and smiled. The final choice is never how a story begins. It's how it is remembered. Every story asks a question. Some ask whether good will defeat evil. Others ask whether love can survive loss. But the oldest stories ask something far more difficult. What are you willing to let go? Because no story can truly end. If everyone insists on staying, every ending is also a gift that allows another story to begin. The library beneath time had become quiet once more. The endless shelves stood still. The stars had returned. The tree of remembrance shimmered with silver leaves. The eater of names, no longer consumed by endless hunger, rested peacefully beneath its branches. Creation closed the unfinished book. Only one page remained blank. The final page, waiting. The seed of the next story glowed softly within Eric's heart. He could feel it. Not as power, as possibility. Every heartbeat whispered the same truth. Choose. The child before memory looked toward him. It is time. Eric's nodded. What must I choose? The child answered gently. Not who lives. Not who dies. You must choose. How the world remembers this age. Silence settled over the library. Hermes frowned. I don't understand. Creation finally spoke. History is never only what happened. It is what survives. The storyteller lifted the unfinished book. 3 endings are possible. The blank page divided into 3 streams of light. Each became a living vision. The first ending. The first vision showed Lythera restored to Olympus. Great temples rose across Greece. Her name was carved beside Zeus, Athena, Apollo, and Hermes. Millions worshipped her. Songs filled every city. The forgotten goddess would never be forgotten again. It was beautiful. Yet Eryx noticed something. People prayed to Lythera, but they no longer remembered one another. They remembered a goddess. They forgot their neighbors. Memory had become another form of pride. The vision dissolved. Another future appeared. Every human being remembered everything. Every joy, every heartbreak, every mistake. No lie survived. No secret remained. The world was perfectly honest. But no one could heal. Old grief never faded. Old wounds never rested. Children inherited every sorrow of their ancestors. Memory became unbearable. The vision quietly faded. The third ending. The final vision showed something much simpler. No temples to Lythera. No statues. No grand festivals. Only ordinary people. A grandmother telling stories to her grandchildren. A father teaching his daughter a song. Friends laughing around a fire. A young woman writing the name of someone she loved into a journal. No one spoke Lythera's name, yet her gift lived inside every act of remembrance. The vision disappeared. Creation looked at Eryx. The choice belongs to the keeper. Eryx stood silently. The answer seemed impossible. He turned toward Lythera. What would you choose? She smiled, the same quiet smile she had worn beside the Silver Lake 3,000 years ago. I never wanted worship. Hermes looked at her. You could finally have everything that was taken. Lythera gently shook her head. If they remember each other, they have already remembered me. Zeus lowered his eyes. He finally understood. For centuries, he had feared her return, yet she had never desired his throne. Only humanity's kindness. The child before memory laughed softly. She still hasn't changed. Promise stepped beside Eryx. The greatest keepers are never remembered. They leave behind a better story. Eryx closed his eyes. He thought of his mother, his father, the little girl freed from the eater's sorrow, the fisherman he might have been, the lonely goddess who had waited beside an empty lake for 3,000 years. Then he opened his eyes. I've chosen. The seed inside his heart burst into gentle light. It rose into the air, not as a blazing sun, as a tiny silver flame. The flame drifted toward the tree of remembrance, then divided into countless smaller lights. Each floated toward a different memory, a forgotten lullaby, an old friendship, a promise kept, a sacrifice made without recognition. The lights spread across the world. Not one entered a temple, not one entered a palace. They entered people. Creation smiled. The choices accepted. The unfinished book began writing itself. Every blank line filled with golden words. The final chapter was no longer about gods. It was about humanity. Across Greece, the last remaining temples that might have been raised for Lithera quietly disappeared from possibility. No monuments were built. No priests claimed her name. Instead, mothers remembered bedtime stories. Teachers remembered forgotten students. Artists remembered why they first began to create. Brothers forgave brothers. Children listened to their grandparents. The world would never know Lithera, but because of her, it would never lose itself again. The tree of remembrance blossomed. Every silver leaf reflected an ordinary human life. Not heroes, not kings, just people. The tree had finally become what it was always meant to be, a home for every soul. Then, the child before memory walked toward Eric's. "You have one choice left." Eric's looked surprised. "I thought it was over." The child smiled sadly. "The story is, but every keeper must make one final sacrifice." The library grew quiet. Even creation lowered its gaze. "What sacrifice?" Eric's whispered. The child looked at him with infinite kindness. "If you remain the keeper, you cannot return to your old life." Hermes' face fell. "What?" The child nodded. "The library exists beyond time. The keeper belongs to every generation. You would watch centuries pass. You would protect memories, but you would never again live an ordinary human life." Eric stood motionless. He thought of the sea, his village, the scent of fresh bread, the sound of his mother's laughter, the simple life he had once wanted. He could almost feel it, just beyond reach. Zeus stepped forward. "Let me bear it." Everyone turned. "I caused this. My punishment should not belong to the boy." Creation gently shook its head. "A sacrifice offered to escape guilt is not the same as one offered through love." Zeus closed his eyes. For once, he accepted the answer. Lithera walked to Eric's. She placed her hand over his heart. "The first keeper chose this. So did the second. So did the 22nd. Her voice trembled. "I prayed that the 23rd never would." A single tear rolled down her face. The first tear Eric's had ever seen her shed. He smiled. "You waited 3,000 years, so no child would lose who they are." He gently held her hand. "If one life can protect every story, then it's a life worth giving." The library itself seemed to breathe. The trees shimmered. The stars overhead glowed brighter than ever before. Creation wrote the final sentence on the last page, then stopped. One line remained unwritten. Not because it was missing, because only Eric's could speak it. The child before memory looked at him. The last words must belong to the keeper. Eric's looked around the library one final time. At Zeus, at Hermes, at the healed eater, at Promise, at Lithera, at the child. Then he looked toward the endless world beyond the tree. He smiled, not with sadness, with peace. He drew one slow breath, ready to speak the final words that would echo through eternity. Some stories end with victory. Some end with loss. Some end with a king upon a throne, or a hero beneath the earth. But the oldest stories never truly end. They simply become quiet enough for someone else to tell them again. And perhaps that is why you are listening now, because every story waits patiently for a heart willing to remember. The library beneath time stood in perfect silence. No wind moved its endless shelves. No leaf fell from the tree of remembrance. The stars above shone brighter than they ever had before, not because they had changed, but because they had finally found balance. Memory, oblivion, time, wonder, no longer rivals, no longer strangers, together. As they had been in the beginning, creation stood with the unfinished book. Only one sentence remained unwritten, the final sentence. It waited, not for a god, not for a king, but for a mortal. Eric stepped beneath the tree. The seed of the next story glowed gently within his heart. Every soul in the library watched him. Hermes, Zeus, Lethera, Promise, the child before memory, the healed keeper of oblivion. Even creation waited. The child smiled. The story belongs to you now. Eric's looked at the countless silver leaves. Everyone contained a life. Some were famous, most were not. A shepherd, a baker, a sailor, a daughter, a friend, a stranger who once chose kindness when no one was watching. He finally understood. The greatest stories were almost never written. They were lived. He took a slow breath, then spoke the final words. May no life be forgotten because it was ordinary. May every joy be treasured. May every sorrow find rest. May every ending become the beginning of compassion. And may every heart, he smiled, become a home for another story. The library answered, not with applause, not with thunder, with light. Every silver leaf upon the tree began glowing. One by one, they released tiny sparks into the sky, millions of them. Each spark carried a memory, not to preserve the past, to inspire the future. The unfinished book closed itself. Creation placed a gentle hand upon its cover. It is finished. At that very moment, the library beneath time began to change. The towering shelves slowly dissolved into silver mist, not because they were dying, because they were dying, because they were no longer needed. The memories they had protected now lived safely inside the hearts of the living. The library had fulfilled its purpose. Hermes looked around in amazement. It's disappearing, Promise smiled. No, it's becoming invisible. The tree of remembrance remained, but it grew smaller. Its endless branches folded inward. Its towering trunk became slender, until it stood as a simple olive tree beside a quiet spring. Anyone who found it would think it ordinary. Only those who remembered kindness would feel something sacred there. The healed eater of names stepped toward oblivion. The ancient wound looked into its own reflection. For the first time since the dawn of creation, there was no hunger, only peace. The shadow bowed, then slowly dissolved into countless black feathers. The feathers drifted into the sky, where they became gentle night. From that day onward, oblivion no longer erased. It simply gave weary memories a place to rest. Promise turned toward creation. My work is finished. Creation smiled warmly. So is mine. The old witness laughed. I've always liked happy endings. Then, like the last page of a beloved book, Promise faded into golden light. Not gone, completed. Hermes approached Zeus. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Zeus removed the golden crown from his head. He looked at it thoughtfully, then placed it upon the ancient stone beneath the olive tree. I ruled for too long, he said quietly. Believing fear was wisdom. Hermes looked at his father. What will you do now? Zeus smiled. Not as a king, as a father. I think I'll begin learning. For the first time in all the ages, the king of Olympus walked away from his throne, without regret. The gods who remained did something no poet had ever imagined. They returned to the world, not demanding worship, but quietly helping where they could. Athena inspired forgotten inventors. Hermes protected lonely travelers. Apollo brought courage to artists. Artemis watched over abandoned children. The gods became quieter, and somehow, greater. Lethera stood beside the silver spring. 3,000 years of waiting were finally over. She looked at Eryx. You gave me everything I hoped for. Eryx smiled. I didn't build you a temple. She laughed softly. I never wanted one. She reached into the water. The silver reflection shimmered. Instead of showing her face, it showed countless ordinary people. Families, friends, teachers, children, people listening to one another, remembering birthdays, keeping promises, speaking the names of those they loved. Lethera closed her eyes. They remember. A gentle breeze crossed the spring. Her silver robes became flowing light. Her form slowly grew transparent. Hermes stepped forward. You're fading. She nodded. My work is complete. No, Eryx whispered. Don't leave. She smiled with the same quiet kindness she had carried since the first chapter. I never will. She placed one hand upon his heart. You searched for a forgotten goddess. But that was never the story. It was always, she looked around the world one last time, about remembering each other. Then, Lithera became light. Not a flash, not an explosion. 1,000 tiny silver birds. They circled the olive tree once, then flew across the world. One settled beside a child learning to read, another beside an old woman telling stories, another beside a young man writing his first poem, another beside a stranger choosing forgiveness instead of anger. No one saw the birds, but all of them smiled. Without knowing why, the forgotten goddess did not disappear. She became every quiet act of remembrance. Eric stood alone beneath the tree, or so he thought. The child before memory appeared beside him. So, the child asked, "Keeper of stories, are you lonely?" Eric's looked toward the endless horizon. He thought of everyone he had met, everyone he had lost, everyone who would come after him. Then he smiled. "No, as long as people remember one another, I'll never be alone." The child nodded. "Then you truly understand." The child slowly walked toward the horizon. With every step, the child became younger. 8 years old, 6, 4, a toddler, an infant wrapped in light. Then, only laughter remained. The first question returned to silence, waiting for another universe, another beginning. Creation opened the finished book, one final time. The title upon its cover had changed. It no longer read, "The Forgotten Goddess." Nobody worshipped. Instead, it simply said, "Every life remembered." Creation smiled. That's a better title. The book closed forever. Epilogue. Thousands of years passed. Empires rose. Empires fell. Temples became ruins. Names faded. Languages changed. The marble statues of Greece weathered beneath sun and rain. People still spoke of Zeus, of Athena, of Hermes, of Apollo. But no ancient scroll ever mentioned Lithera. Historians searched. Archaeologists dug through forgotten sanctuaries. Scholars argued over missing fragments. No evidence remained. Not one inscription, not one statue, not one prayer. Because some truths were never meant to be proven, only lived. And perhaps, one quiet evening, someone sat beside a loved one, listening instead of speaking, forgiving instead of judging, writing down the name of a grandparent before it could be forgotten, holding the hand of someone who feared being alone, telling a child, "Let me tell you a story," without knowing why. Those moments always felt sacred. Maybe that was Lithera. Maybe it wasn't. The keeper never answered questions like that. And if, one day, you find yourself remembering someone the rest of the world has forgotten, if you choose kindness when no one is watching, if you keep a promise long after others have given up, if you tell a story simply because it deserves to be heard, then perhaps, somewhere beyond time, beside a quiet olive tree, a forgotten goddess will smile. Not because you remembered her, but because you remembered someone else.